Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 96 of the Xbox Hall Gamers podcast. This week, it's just Q and I again. Where we had a big week last week, so we're going to kick back a little bit, take it easy, maybe do a bit of a shorter show. Although I say that, who knows what could happen. As always, we do the show live on Twitch. Xbox Hall of Gamers is the place to find us. Come say hi, hang out in the chat, shit post, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, Keo, how you been, mate?
Yeah, I've been really good. So I've been doing a lot of fixing of my cords and stuff like that this week. Basically I moved my setup around. I've got a three monitor setup, and now that messes up all my cords, of course. So because I shifted everything across into a different area of the room, and I've had to pull my whole cabinet out, redo all my console, set up new stuff, and then just put everything back together. So that was my whole yesterday. So it's mostly cleaning this week, and back to some gaming. So.
Oh, fantastic.
mm.
Yeah, I've like my current PC setup is like the cord management is non-existent because I kind of bought this computer off someone who was leaving, and they were like, "Hey, I'm leaving the country. Do you want this computer?" And I was like, "Fuck, yes, I'm sure I'll figure it out." Just sort of, it was very much like square peg round hole kind of thing, where just kind of move stuff to where it would kind of make sense. But one of these days, I actually need to pull it all out and like sort it out in a way that is actually user friendly, and so I actually get in and change stuff. Because if I want to unplug any of these cords or change your USB port or something, it's a whole rigmarole.
Yeah, well, hot tip, have a roll of self-adhesive like Velcro tape. Like it's the best thing. It's better than like any kind of little clips or anything or like zip ties or anything. It's nice and clean. You can undo it and redo it. You don't have to snap anything and put it back together or anything like that. So, hmm.
Fantastic. I will definitely keep that in mind. Um, so let's get straight into our community question we got this week from our good friend Isaac, who says, "Hey guys, you mentioned watching live streams on the last podcast. So which games do you enjoy watching on a live stream? Also, do you typically like to watch a longer game played out over multiple sessions or shorter games that change with each stream? Thanks for taking my question." Thank you very much, Isaac. He also mentions this could also be about games you like to play on live stream as well, but I don't think most of you do live streams, and you've kind of addressed that in the past. That's true. But
I'd have to say our live streaming has been lacking. I know Shadow and I have on and off streamed. I think my Twitter handle has like seasonal streamer in it to justify me
sure.
not being there all the time. But I'm always, like I said before, just changing my setup and redoing things and making things better and stuff. So it's just like I don't tend to watch streams of games that I want to play.
Mm.
And I'll watch stuff that I've finished to watch somebody else play, or just stuff like Final Fantasy 14 that it's just this ongoing thing, and like people having conversations and stuff like that, really, which is really good. So, hmm.
Yeah,
What about yourself?
for me, it's, I mean, obviously, it's no secret that I'm not really, I don't stream anything personally.
Hmm.
And I don't really watch a lot of live streams outside of, guide videos and that kind of stuff. Like watching a long play, I don't really feel like I'm not watching it for the stream. I'm watching it for the information.
Yeah.
Um, Having said that, like I do occasionally watch, there are a couple of streamers I do occasionally watch as like background noise, I guess, or I don't usually catch streams live most of the time. So like Pay Money Wubby, for example, I'm a big fan of his ridiculous content. Some of it, again, I don't know, it's kind of hit or miss, but there's a few every now and then. But I usually like check out like archive channels and things like that to kind of catch up on the streams that I've missed or I'm interested in, just to kind of have on in the background while I'm working on something. I have to admit, like the whole streamer stuff makes absolutely no sense to me as a human being. Like I don't really see much of the appeal in watching other people play video games.
Mm.
Having said that, like I think that there's stuff around like narrative and like story in games that of things that I'd like looking at PlayStation exclusives, for example. Um, there's a guy who takes like all the Uncharted games and Spider-Man games and all that kind of stuff and edits
Mm.
them down into like a movie, quote unquote.
Oh yeah, the movie, yeah.
Yeah, which is like a collection of all the cutscenes plus some like in gameplay stuff and other bits and pieces kind of edited together
Hmm.
to make it relatively seamless so you don't have any of the fluff of actually playing a video game, which,
There's a huge market for making YouTube videos, which is just the cutscenes of the games and stuff like that. So
yeah, which I think makes a lot of sense. And like that's kind of again why I've talked about in the past, why a lot of the reason I play video games is for the narrative and the story and all that kind of
mm,
stuff. So if there's a way for me to get that without spending, $800 on a new console and a bunch of games that I don't need, um, then that works for me. So, but I feel like the best streamers, you kind of have different categories of streamers. I think, some people like to watch speed runs. Some people are like, oh, I just want to see this person play through this game. But I think a lot of it is like that personality driven.
yeah.
Yeah, like anyone can watch a stream, anyone can play a game, but a lot of people who follow big streamers or like video game streamers in particular are like they're usually like, oh, I'm going to check out this game and play it because I find the person entertaining and I want to see how they feel about that game, not necessarily just the game itself.
Yeah, the problem that I find with streaming is that you have to find your niche and then you have to attract people to that niche. And then you're talking to yourself until you have enough people to talk to. And then you can kind of start branching out into other things. And if you branch too far out, then people don't like you anymore, or you have to either stick in a hole. I absolutely hate the term variety streamer
Yeah,
because
right.
I like to log in and just play whatever I'm playing, and I don't want to be labeled a variety streamer.
Sure.
So, if I could do Final Fantasy like once or twice a week or something, the potential things that I want to do streaming again. The ideal thing would be, hey, have a Final Fantasy night, a racing night, a shooting night or something like that, and have like a few things going, you know. Because I play so many racing games, and I've actually had streams of like old Forza 5 and stuff like that. And I've had somebody pop in and go, "Oh man, nobody streams this anymore. I'm so glad that somebody does it."
Mm.
And it's a little bit more interesting because I do it in like the cockpit view kind of as well.
Oh,
So
right. Yep.
it's a little bit more flying by your seat kind of, racing instead of just seeing the car kind of dip about, stuff like that. So like it's kind of until you kind of get a stream going, it's kind of like a lot of people consistently coming and watching you. It's kind of just dip in and out of different things.
Hmm.
So, you know, um, which I tend to do as well. So, I am looking at maybe doing like I go across all the platforms too, PS and Xbox for streaming too. So, in terms of stuff that I watch, I mostly have Final Fantasy 14 streamers tabbed, and then just people that I've gravitated to or that they've kind of had, like, you know, yeah, you've got stuff like Asmongold and stuff like that, and he has like conversations, and I only ever see his YouTube videos on YouTube, and I never see him go live in his notifications because he's always on like one channel or another channel,
Yep.
has like a second channel that you're not subscribed to that the streaming happens, but so Call of Duty Zombies as well. So like
Mm.
if you want speed runs, there are people that just do consistent Call of Duty Zombies Easter egg speed runs. And then they have like the mods on PC where they can do it all solo when some of those things you have to have 3 or 4 people or whatever, or
Yeah.
yeah, so but I do like interesting conversations in the streams. So
That's what I'm mostly there for is
mm.
is to get people's takes on stuff and then to just yell at them in the chat when they're wrong.
Do you care about having the camera at all if you did watch a stream?
I don't know. I mean, I feel like I don't really think it adds too much. I mean, having said that, I guess like VTubers took up, you know, became huge, and then it was like that's kind of the best of both worlds, right? Because they're not actually on screen, but they are kind of.
Yeah,
There's like a representation of them, which
and
I
they
think kind
get
of yeah,
that personal emotional security where they're not actually on stream, but they're on
exactly,
stream. Yeah, yeah.
yeah. So I think that kind of I don't know.
Hmm.
I was just looking in the on our Discord, the Xbox Hall of Gamers Discord. Come join us and say hi, ask questions, and all that kind of stuff. in the questions channel, Zach has said that he likes to watch Souls-like games for reasons apparently. Didn't want to extrapolate on that. Cameron's talking about, yeah, it's like, again, like he kind of brings up a point that, yeah, we have a lot of live streamer friends, which makes sense given that what we do in the podcast world, and we're doing this show live on Twitch at the moment, and there are other people out there who we've had on as guests and worked with in the past. Obviously Shane Firehawk does his streams as well, and Cameron talks about watching his while he's gaming or working. And then there was some ridiculous suggestion here about me streaming the Eliminator.
Oh, I wonder who suggested that.
Yeah, right. So I have considered streaming the Eliminator actually. I might actually just go and do it. Again, I wouldn't have a face camera or anything because I'd be streaming directly from Xbox, so it would be a pretty lo-fi thing. But I would be curious, to people can see the pain that I go through when I play those games.
Yeah, I got my win in Eliminator on stream.
Oh well, there you go.
That's nice. That's a nice win. I know what it feels like. It's a nice win.
Maybe I'll have good luck. I mean, that's probably not a bad idea. It would definitely keep me motivated. So yeah, Isaac, maybe watch this space. Maybe I'll stream it. Yeah. I don't know. Is there anything else you want to add to that, Kia?
No, not so much. No, not really. It kind of blends into the YouTube / streaming because like all my stuff goes to the YouTube as well, right? So
Sure.
And it's like, do you have your camera in there? Do you not have your camera? Long plays, people tend to not put their cameras in just to purely have the video, or it's just broken up and weird. So, but yeah, no, other than that, it pretty much covers it. But if there's anything specific that they want to know, just yeah, drop it in the channel. You can try the question again.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's crack into the news. Like we said, there isn't a huge amount this week, but there are a couple of like high-profile stories that are just kind of we'd be remiss if we didn't comment on them.
Yes, where would you like to start?
I think we'll just start with the Star Wars one. It's basically just like a one-liner. I'll basically just say that it looks like we're going to have a Star Wars Jedi Survivor Fallen Order third game. Again, they haven't come up with a title or anything, but in the classic Hollywood tradition, an actor has come out and basically said, "Oh yeah, we're working on that." When Respawn hasn't said anything about it, I guess this is kind of like not hugely surprising news. I was pretty much always pitched as having some sort of a trilogy, but obviously Jedi Survivor did well enough that they're going to do another one. I'm excited for it. I really enjoyed Jedi Survivor. It's on my Game of the Year list for sure. I know. What are your thoughts, Kia?
Well, have you is it set up for a third game?
Kind of. I mean, it's not. It ends on it doesn't end like definitively in a way that they'll never do another one. But there's a lot of stuff that happens towards the end of that game where I was like, oh, okay, this was unexpected. And I mean, Star Wars gives you a lot of room to play with, especially in that time period that they're talking about here, which is, middle of the Empire, 10 years before A New Hope, I think roughly. So, yeah, I don't know. I definitely feel like I wasn't surprised that they did Survivor, but I was surprised they did like quite a large time jump for that game in terms of like from where Fallen Order ended to where Survivor began.
Does it tread a lot of the same ground?
A little bit. I mean, it's a very sequel in a lot of ways. There's a lot of stuff in there that you're like, yeah, okay, that's totally expected. But it was kind of it very much had a Gears of War 2 to Gears of War 1 type of vibe where it was like, bigger, better, more badass was the kind of thing where they just kind of took what they ran with and expanded. Be very curious to see what they would do with the third one, what they would keep, what they would throw away.
I like the idea of kind of stories like this ending after a second game.
Okay, yeah, I can see that.
So like trilogies, it's the age-old like movies of trilogies, and that's easy to throw together. But like, I mean, you're looking at, say, if they've got a grand master plan with this, then it's kind of like you're looking at like a beginning, middle, and end, kind of like that story arc where it's like, where does a trilogy start? Where does a trilogy end? So if they had a plan, they needed to have had a plan beforehand, and they needed to have this game as kind of like the middle and have something epic happen, and then conclude something kind of to finalize it in like the third game, if it's set up to be a trilogy.
Yeah, the thing with it's interesting, right? Because like if
Yeah.
you look at like Star Wars is built on trilogies, right? So
Mm.
it's not a huge fucking surprise. But
Yeah.
I think that the thing with a movie trilogy is that like you're talking relatively short chunks.
Hmm.
You kind of have like you have like your kind of arcs
Yeah.
there, but
Yeah.
it's like it's kind of like okay, well we know we're going to do a certain amount of movies, but like in a video game you need to have a full pretty much have some sort of full arc
Yeah.
within the game itself if you're going to have people playing for 20 to 25
Mm.
hours.
Yeah.
Um,
So like if we lose this character, if they don't make another game, then I'm all in for another game.
yeah.
Like I think that this character should stick around, and if they don't use it in a game, they need to put it somewhere else.
Well, that was going to be my question, right? Because obviously,
Mm.
Cameron Monaghan is the most cap, and he's a real actor. You know, he was
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
Gotham and a bunch of other stuff. Yeah, and he's the one who basically said this was that it's started. But again, I don't think this is going to be anytime soon. This is going to be
Mm.
3 or 4 years out at least, because they're still basically having conversations basically at this point. So, um, but
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that with the way Star Wars works with its, multimedia stuff, where everything is in the same universe, everything's connected, people have theorized that he could potentially show up in a show at any point, really.
Yes.
It because it's the classic thing where if you don't see him die on screen, then you
Hmm.
have to assume that he's going to be still alive and show up some point.
Yeah, and like he could just show up in like an animated show in a completely different art
Potentially,
style, and it wouldn't even matter.
or a book or a
Yeah.
comic or
Yeah.
like could be all kinds of stuff potentially. But yeah, we'll see. I mean, like I'm glad they're doing a third game. I'm excited to see kind of how if they decide to keep it to a trilogy, how they're going to wrap it up. The Survivor story is, because it's such a big time jump, it is quite a separate story to the first game. I mean, like mechanically, the game is very similar. The characters are all, you meet a lot of the same characters,
Okay. Hmm.
but it's like it is kind of its own adventure that you could kind of play on its own.
Yeah.
Kind
Yeah.
of. I mean,
Okay.
like,
Well,
yeah.
yeah, they could do that then. They could just have some rogue adventure kind of like,
Yeah. Basically, it's like he.
yeah.
The whole thing is that like the first game starts where he gets himself into a situation where he gets found out for being a Jedi, and then the second
Hmm.
one is basically like, um, he's basically like the last few years been on his own trying to do the like traveling Ronin helping people Jedi thing while his
Hmm.
team is like broken up for whatever reason. And so what the future of that could be is he's like working with a new crew basically, and they're doing like
Yeah,
they're
okay.
doing a job. And a very very minor spoiler for the first hour of that
Uh-huh.
game, things go very badly.
Hmm.
The job goes sideways and he basically has to like pick up the pieces, and that's kind of the game, is that like you kind of trying to figure out what the fuck is going on. And it's kind of like his like he's had his like fall from grace, and he's trying to kind of figure out like put things back together.
Yeah, I was just having a thought. If they do like a third one, they should do an Assassin's Creed Revelations thing where like a handoff or something, or like just really,
Yeah.
really old
Yeah, well, like it wouldn't
Cal
surprise me if
Kestis.
they do that, like how, because there is again, like we said, if he didn't die
Mm.
and he's still out there, Disney could pull him from anywhere. So they potentially could do like a big time jump into like like into one of the later like after one of the later
Yep.
movies, and be like, yeah, he's
Mm.
like an old dude now, like trying to figure out like how what is he going to do with the Jedi Order stuff the rest of his life. So yeah, again, like
Yeah.
I'm a huge Star Wars fan, so obviously I'm just all over this kind of stuff. I just consume all the media. I'm listening to the Thrawn books right now. Like, yeah.
Yeah.
um
What's the peak media at the moment for Star Wars?
Probably television.
Yeah.
I think I've been watching the Ahsoka TV show.
Mhm.
That has been, if you're is
I haven't seen
basically,
any of it. I've seen Obi-Wan, and that's it. And I think we
gotcha.
talked about it last week. Mm.
Yeah. So I think that like Ahsoka is basically set after the fall of the Empire,
Mm.
about 10 years, I think. 10 years after the events of Rebels, I think. So the Rebels cartoon is basically 4 seasons, probably one of my favorite pieces of Star Wars media, especially the later seasons. This is made by the same guy, but it's all live action, and they've kind of taken some of those characters and gone, okay, what do they look like now? Like after
Yep.
this, like, um, I'm really, really enjoying it for the most part. It's a little bit, there's some rough edges on it, but it is really cool to see a lot of this fun stuff that, Yeah. Anyway, I don't want to get too sidetracked.
Yeah,
But yeah,
yeah, no,
really
that's
enjoyed
cool.
that. Also, really enjoyed Andor as well when that came out, and I know they're working on another season of that, which leads up to Rogue One. But I think like TV really seems to be like where Star Wars, TV and video games kind of feel like where Star Wars needs to be at the moment. Movies are too expensive, and after fucking Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker just being kind of nightmares. And a lot of the movies getting cancelled and not doing super well and all that kind of stuff. And
Yeah,
I don't know.
yeah.
It's
I like the idea that some of these games are coming back, like the old Jedi Knight shooter is coming back and stuff like that.
they're
Like I
doing
think
Dark
that was one of the
Forces.
first
Yeah,
Dark Forces.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, I think that was before Jedi Knight. That character
yeah. So Kyle Katarn.
Kyle Katarn went into Jedi Knight
Yeah,
and then
so it was
KOTOR as well.
Dark Forces. Dark Forces 2 was Dark Forces was basically just a first person shooter. Dark
Yep.
Forces 2 had some of the Force stuff, and then I
Mm.
think it was Jedi Knight, Jedi Outcast, which was the one that everyone loves, and then Jedi Academy was the kind of sequel to that.
Right.
All
Mm.
fucking great games. Again, none of it canon anymore, unfortunately.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
and then yeah, like you said, KOTOR as well, which they're making the remake for, which is kind of apparently running into trouble. But yeah, I mean, I'll play just about anything Star Wars related, so I'm very interested in like yeah, like Outlaw and all that kind of stuff and the things that are coming up.
Mm.
I'm hoping we get a few more sort of small to mid-sized Star Wars games would be great, rather than just
Yeah, yeah, because
big projects.
we have Outlaw coming, and what else is coming?
So we have the Knights of the Republic remake,
Mm.
which got moved developers, and then we also have Eclipse, which is the Quantic Dream game,
Oh,
um,
right. Yeah,
which
yeah.
they announced, and they're like, yeah, this isn't coming out for like 5 years.
Mm-mm. Mm.
And apparently there's been like no news about it or anything, so I'm not holding my breath. Yeah, I don't know, and that's kind of it. Although apparently there are some rumors that there are some other projects that haven't been announced yet that are still in the process. I think EA might be working on something.
Yeah.
Um, and then obviously, yeah, we'll have whatever this third Jedi Survivor game, which I guess might be the EA thing, might be something else. I'm not sure. And then
Mm.
there's a few other mobile games and stuff, but obviously I don't give a shit about that because it's just microtransaction hell.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, well, that's probably about enough said on that then,
Yeah,
really.
yeah,
Um, I can take this next one with
yeah. Go for it.
so Phil Spencer shares tribute as Sony's Jim Ryan announces retirement. So so Jim Ryan, basically the CEO currently of PlayStation, is in March 2024 taking his retirement and shared a message to celebrate his accomplishments. He basically said, I have announced my retirement after nearly 30 years at Sony Interactive Entertainment. I did not take this decision lightly, and I absolutely love SIE and our community. But of late, I've been finding it increasingly difficult to strike the right balance between having my home in the UK and my job in the United States, which is fair. Ryan begins in his thank you post to the PlayStation community. I feel humbled to have the opportunity to lead a company delivering products that touches millions of lives. From award-winning games to incredibly immersive technical achievements delivered with PlayStation 5, I'm immensely proud of what we've achieved and very optimistic for the future of Sony Interactive Entertainment. So Spencer then went on to say, Jim Ryan has been a great contributor to our industry and a fierce leader for PlayStation. I wish him the best for what he does next. Thank you for all you've done in the community over the last 30 years. He has done a lot of driving with this company. So,
Yeah.
like with all the ups and downs and the stuff that happens and how like the memes that have come out of Jim Ryan's face have been amazing.
Good old crying
But
Jim Ryan. Yep.
yeah, I mean, it's something. It is kind of sad to see the end of it, but he's been there a while. He's been doing a lot. So, what are your thoughts on Jim leaving?
It's an interesting one because obviously, how long was Jim CEO for? I'm trying to remember. It's been a fair few years now. But obviously, he's been, like you said, working at Sony for nearly
A
30
long time.
years.
Yeah.
Him being appointed that role in CEO kind of was a bit of a, at least in my mind, a bit of a key change in terms of how Sony did their business and their kind of priorities.
Yes. Exactly. Yep.
It's very interesting to see a Japanese company having a UK CEO working in the United States, right? Like I feel like that's when you think about Sony, you kind of think about it as like, oh, PlayStation, relatively Americanized, like, big budget Western games. But Sony's a Japanese company.
Yeah, I mean, like the PlayStation Japan arm and the US arm are hugely separated.
Mm,
Like, I don't have any good examples because I'm not like set in that
sure.
ecosystem so much. But like a lot of the things that come out of the American PlayStation, don't resonate with the people in Japan. And like Jim just has that Western appeal that has been able to lift that side up, which is something that Xbox is missing, essentially. And the CEO the person that's going to take over from him, I'm missing his name at the moment, but I
Hiroki
believe
Todoroki. Yeah.
it's a Japanese
He's
board
their
member.
COO and CFO.
Yeah,
So he's
yeah.
basically
Okay, cool.
he's
Yeah.
going to be the interim CEO until they find someone
Yeah.
else.
Yeah. So are they looking for another, Western?
So yeah, that was going to be my question, right? Because I think that obviously Sony had a very strong Japanese presence,
Hmm.
especially PlayStation 2, PlayStation 3 days, right? Obviously they have the US and the UK and Europe and that was kind of thing, but it was having your CEO be mainly European focused sort of was like, oh, well, actually, it's like, yeah, obviously we're a Japanese company, but the focus, the growth, the actual power, and the decision making is going to come out of Europe. And like that was, I'm very curious to see if that's like, yeah, you're right. Like, is that going to be the same? Are they looking for
Mm.
looking for someone in Europe, or are they going to
And
try and pull it back a little bit?
Europe is a good point because so much stuff comes to Europe from PlayStation before it hits the United States.
Yeah.
But
Again,
like,
which wasn't always the case. Like
mm,
like Europe was a lot of an afterthought.
yeah. Yeah, Australia was the first to have the third version of the PlayStation 5 because they've
Oh,
rebuilt it
right.
twice,
Yeah, right,
and
right.
we ended up with it in the stores before anyone else. So one that has like a smaller heat sink, and a lot of the YouTubers, the tech YouTubers were basically ordering Australian PlayStations to
Mm.
do their testing and like picking the thing to pieces, basically. Yeah, so has favored Europe immensely. So this could change a few things. So,
Yeah, I mean, Sony are in a pretty good position right now in
mhm,
terms of like market wise. They're destroying Xbox. This is like 3-1 in most regions. Nintendo are kind of not really a competitor, but
mhm,
I guess it's a question of like where does Sony see its priorities in the future? Where do they see their growth? They're obviously we've seen the stuff of things being brought to PC most
mhm,
recently, which is kind of a new thing for
mhm.
them, and then being a little bit more open about things like crossplay and other stuff like that.
Yeah.
Do you
And
think?
we need
Yeah,
need what were you going to say?
I was like, is that going to continue? Is this going to become more conservative again? I think this like having someone at this level basically stepping down. I mean, obviously he's retiring.
Yeah.
He's been there for a long time. It's not like
Yeah.
it's not like he's had bad sales and they're kicking him out, right? Like it's
Yeah.
yeah, pretty clearly his decision for the most part. But hmm,
Mm. Well, you always never know with that as well
sure.
because people always, announce publicly one way when it could be another way. But
Yeah,
this
absolutely.
this man ferried about country to country, fighting the Xbox acquisition of Activision Blizzard, and like he's got a lot of power in conversation with a lot of people. So there's a lot of pockets that he filled, and mad respect for the dude. He's got grit.
Yeah, 100%.
He's really knuckled down on hard decisions with this company, and I have a lot of respect for that. So.
I mean, yeah, PlayStation is doing really well, and he's driven a lot of that change. So,
Mm.
hmm. I mean, shit, we're talking about him on an Xbox podcast, so just to give you an idea of how ubiquitous his presence has been in the industry.
No, that's all right. It's huge gaming news. So,
I mean, if I was putting my tinfoil hat on, it might be that he decided that he was going to leave after they couldn't get the Activision Blizzard stuff canceled. But
well, I mean, that'd be eat you inside, right? So it's done. It's just something couldn't like you could either go hard or well go hard or go home, right?
yeah, I mean,
Let's say he's done.
he definitely tried.
This is the meme part where everybody's trying to nail him for not getting the X like
Yeah, for
for
sure.
not stopping the Activision Blizzard. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
definitely sown his seeds with that one. So
I'm wondering how long it's going to take them to find a new CEO. I imagine
yeah, I
a
don't
lot of
know.
people will be vying for the position.
Hmm. Yeah, I think it needs to happen relatively quickly, or Hiroki needs to stay in there for a bit, and
Yeah, I get the feeling I think that will be the key change, right? Like if it's like, oh,
mm,
Hiroki is very much the interim one and they're very like actively looking for someone, or if it's like, no, Hiroki is interim because they have to say interim, and then it just becomes
yeah,
like again,
yeah,
a lot of interim CEOs just end up being CEOs. That's,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
not.
If he went like everywhere with Jim Ryan, for example, and
Hmm.
was just basically by his side, knew everything that he did, he could easily follow that up and keep all of that going. But if he's wildly disconnected from anything that he's been doing, then like it'll be completely different. So
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I don't know. I mean, I don't know enough about his role as COO. I mean,
I know nothing.
COO tends to
Yeah,
have
yeah.
there's quite a traditional link between that and the CEO in terms of like promotional hierarchy.
Mm.
But yeah, but they've got time, I guess. He's taken on that role in October next month, so in a couple of days, and that's all the
Mhm.
way until April 1st, which is the next financial year. Which again is
Yep,
probably no surprise, right? Jim Ryan's hanging on till the end of the financial year, get
yep,
his bonus payout when he leaves, I'm sure.
yeah. I think that pretty much like 2 or 3 years into this generation of console, we're pretty much at the point where everything that he set up is starting to settle,
Yeah,
and anything that's set up to come out is a good 2, 3, 4 years worth of content that Hiroki probably doesn't have to worry about, and just you can micromanage all of that stuff along
true.
the way and make sure it works. And we'll be seeing a bit of Jim Ryan's work for a while, I think, with other companies. So
Yeah, no, it's a good point, right? Like
mm,
it is still 6 months away, so there's still probably a fair amount of work to happen in that space.
yeah,
We've still got a whole holiday to get a holiday season to get through. So
yeah, or maybe he just wants to get out before that stupid little PS5 controller screen thing comes out. The Portal, the
oh yeah,
PSP.
God, I
You
forgot
could
about
say
that.
like to have an acronym that's exactly the same as the one that you've already had for starters.
Come on,
You
guys.
know.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Um, all right. I will just quickly touch on this other one that was kind of an interesting conversation that came up a couple of days ago, which was Capcom's president thinks that apparently game prices are too low, uh, which okay, so Capcom's president and COO basically said that the there was a discussion around development costs and needing to raise wages, and basically saying that game prices in general are too low, quote unquote. Which is,
Yeah.
that's a good headline grabber for sure. Um, I don't know. We've talked a little bit about, again, we know fuck all about development, and I do kind of wish Cameron was here a little bit to shed a little bit of light on this kind of stuff. But
Yeah.
I don't know. I'll read the quote out here. Personally, I feel that game prices are too low. Development costs are around 100 times higher than they were in the days of the Famicom, but the price of software hasn't risen so much. They also need to raise the wages in order to attract talented people. Given the wages are rising across the industry as a whole, I think the option of raising unit prices is a healthy form of business. Um,
First up, I'd like to say that that quote hopefully translates directly to them paying their staff more.
yes, ideally, yeah, sure.
So, well, you're saying that about the industry? Does that mean that we're getting a little bit more on the side?
I mean, it's not wrong. It's not wrong, right? Like you
No.
definitely need to have
Mm,
I feel like, and again, I might be talking out my ass.
mm. Oh, I 100% will be anyway as well.
Yeah,
So,
for sure. I think that maybe it's like I'm trying to figure out a way of putting this that doesn't come off as they obviously attracting talent is the main
mm,
reason they cite for needing to raise wages, which is fair enough, right? It's a competitive industry,
yeah.
but what happened with like I guess the thing is like you're not just competing with other game developers, right? Because a lot of people who work in programming and all that kind of stuff can work on other things in less stressful areas. And a lot of that classic thing of like people who make video games are often taken advantage of because they have supposed to like love the game. We've seen this when we talked about like crunch culture and game dev and that kind of stuff being like, well, it's kind of expected. And I'm like, yeah, I think the raising wages thing is obviously very, very important, but I don't know. I don't know if raising game prices is going to really make that much of a difference.
Yeah,
Know, like,
so
yeah.
The thing that kind of comes up, and it definitely comes up to do with crunch and stuff as well, is basically in this. So this isn't my exclusive idea or anything. So like the gaming prices, on the shelf, new release prices. We had this conversation, I think, when games were going from like $60 to $70
Yeah.
US, months ago, with the PlayStation stuff in particular. So basically, when you're looking at the way like inflation and stuff works, and the fact that games have stayed so long at lower prices, then you're not really like none of it's translating like down the line the way that you'd expect it to. So, I mean, as an end user, us going out and buying 70, $80 new release title. Well, in Australia, we pay 110, $120 for new releases
Yep.
sometimes.
Yep.
So it's
That's so much
great
they
for
cost here
something,
too.
have something like Xbox Game Pass, at least we can offset a little bit of that and buy maybe one or two full release on new release kind of games. But um like that uh games are taking longer to produce, which means like thousands of staff over 2, 3 extra years on the normal price, and then games are still coming out at the same price. So they've got to invest from somewhere else if they're getting that cash from somewhere else to translate
I
across.
I guess so, but
So
I also think that he kind of points out the problem. He said, development costs are 100 times higher than they were in the days of the Famicom.
yep.
Like, that's not the consumer's fault for the most
No,
part, right?
no.
I think that, like, obviously raising prices is the way they want to do it, right? But what they should be doing is actually making smaller
Mhm.
games, or basically, not putting so much into inflated budget. Again, like this kind of relates back to a little bit of what we talked about last week with Phil Spencer's email about AAA game development, which was a really, really interesting read, and I recommend everyone go and check it out. Where he basically said that the way larger publishers have basically reacted to physical storefronts no longer being as important, and the democratization of people being able to publish their own stuff, is that they've gone, well, the only thing that we can do is the thing we can do as publishers is to put in $200 million budgets into our games to make them huge blockbusters, but also that means we need to have like real certainty that this shit's going to pop off. Yeah, I don't know,
Well, I mean,
yeah,
maybe the statement needs to be turned around a little bit. It's like, well, if games are so cheap, then why aren't people buying more?
true. Yeah, that's a very, very good point, and I think part of that is competition.
Hmm.
I think that people obviously there are like, if we think about the kinds of games that we play and talk about on this show,
Hmm.
how often do we talk about like big budget AAA releases that we paid full price for on launch?
Yeah, well, we're not reviewers, right? We're not getting like all of the reviewers out there that are fishing for codes every day, trying to they're playing all of the new releases all the time, whenever they can get a hold of these things, right?
Yeah.
And there are some really respectable ones that will go out and buy the games as well, and then give the games away and stuff like that.
Mm,
To say, look, because that's a conscious thing. It's like
sure.
I want to feel like I'm still contributing in some way, kind of.
Yeah, yeah, no, yeah, for sure, for sure.
Mm,
Yeah, it's a good point.
mm. So, like, yeah, it's a really hard call with that one. So
Yeah, I think that like yeah, like I can see it from both sides. I
mm,
think that like Capcom are in a pretty good spot right now from their recent releases. They were obviously there was the talk about, there was also another news story that I didn't put in here about them talking
mhm,
about like if they were going to be acquired by Xbox, because there was that discussion around them
yeah,
being on Xbox's shortlist for acquisition.
mm,
And they basically said that they weren't interested at this point.
yeah. Well,
Um,
if anything, Capcom is in the best spot to know with so many bangers lately. Like a lot of their stuff is hitting,
yeah,
and it's doing really, really well. And they're still not getting what they need out of it. So
yeah, and there's been talk about how AAA game development is basically broken and that it kind of will all
mm,
fall over at some point.
mm,
Um, I mean, people were having the rumors out there that apparently GTA 6 is going to cost $150 US when it comes out, which I think they've come out and said is not true. But the fact
yeah,
that that's even a headline is that like, I don't like, I know fuck all about economics, but I know that I would imagine that most the elasticity on supply and demand for video games is probably pretty high. If games get too expensive, people will just stop buying them.
yeah, yeah. And those 20-year-old games that are being re-released now, like what was it, 2009, 10 or something for Dead Space?
Yes, yeah, 2009, I think. Yeah,
Yeah, those games aren't just being thrown onto the new console to play in their existing format. They're being rebuilt.
yeah,
So, like, I think the whole remake thing needs a different like moniker. I think rebuilt is a better term in terms
mm,
of some of these things instead of remake, because remake is such a terrible term. It's undefinable with some games. They're either just being thrown on. They're either Metal Gear Solid Classic Collection, which is just being dumped onto the
ports
console
basically.
in
Yeah,
720p, or they're being completely rebuilt in 4K. So they're covered under the same banner. So
mm,
hmm. So and then like Capcom particularly, they're doing a lot of really good work with a lot of the redos that they're doing with it for the games. So there is a lot of extra work going in there. So where you've got DLC in Resident Evil 4, which was packaged with the game on the PS2, they've bundled it separately to sell, then that's not terrible.
yeah, and they're charging $10 for it, right? It's not
Hmm.
the end of the world, but I think that they would much rather be charging 30 for it. I think is kind of what they're
Yeah,
saying.
yeah.
And I mean, again, I'm a massive socialist. I also am of the opinion that like if when game developers do well, they never put the prices down. We've
Hmm.
never seen prices go, oh well, $70. We put the games up to $70, but we had a really, really good financial year this year, so we're going to put it back down to 60 for our next release. It's like, well,
Yeah,
no, 70 is the market now. So
yeah, yeah.
I'm very disinclined to be like, yeah, we should absolutely raise all the prices because,
Hmm.
like, at the end of the day, no video game, no business, no company has the right to exist. I think at the end of the day, right? Like we all
Hmm.
live in a capitalist society, and at the end
Hmm.
of the day, if you can't compete in that with what you've got,
Yeah.
tough
In
shit.
in an ideal commercial world, I guess, video games are in that weird spot where it's like, when do you lower the price of a video game? Then ideally, you would keep a video game at the price you release it at until you hit the point of profit. And then when you're at the point of profit, do you lower it then? Because you're no longer, you're still getting
Yeah,
money out of it, but you're not getting as much. You've covered your costs and you can lower it. Or do you keep it, which we find digitally on the PlayStation Network and on Xbox and stuff, where I think there was some class action stuff going on in the UK with the PlayStation where everything, even on the PS3, was staying at the same price and nothing was ever being reduced. And
yeah,
nothing ever gets reduced now. And you're still paying on Xbox 360, $70, $80 for games that are still on there for sale,
yeah.
that still haven't been reduced. So like, is it because they haven't hit are they making 100% profit on that? Is nobody buying it on there anymore? Which probably not on the 360.
Mm.
But I mean, if you're going to buy it, then you have to buy it at that price, and then that's it. So at what point do you lower everything? So, and if we're moving to a digital market, there needs to be more consistency with what prices are going in and when things get adjusted down the line as well. So
Yeah, I'm hoping that like the proliferation of Game Pass
mm,
and this kind of subscription model thing will kind of ease that a little bit, where it's like, yeah, like these publishers or these platform holders will give you some money up front to put your game on the platform. When we saw last week like how much they're paying in terms of like millions of dollars to get these games on the platform exclusively for a bit. And then it's like, well, you don't have to sell the game anymore. Like you've kind of made the money you need to. You make some extra money on microtransactions. Some people will buy the game because they don't want to miss out on it. They'll try it on Game Pass, and maybe that's the model going forward. And that's a future that Microsoft is very, very keen on, because then they're like, well, we have the best streaming system, so people will go through us. So we'll get to clip the ticket more than Sony will.
yeah, and
But
you just chuck it on Game Pass and then you buy the DLC. People buy the DLC.
yeah, I mean, like we were talking before the show about High on Life having DLC
Hmm.
coming out next week. And it's like, yeah, I'm just going to jump on that and pick it
Yeah,
up.
Long is on Game Pass, and I'm more than happy to get the season pass or something like that
Yeah,
just to do the DLC
exactly.
while it's there.
I just think that
So,
that's going to be a tougher pill to swallow when you're a big, Ubisoft, Take Two,
mm,
that kind of stuff, where
mm.
you've put $200 million into a game and you need to make that money back pretty quickly. As opposed to like an indie dev who has put, maybe 5 million into it, and they get a $1 million payout from Microsoft for exclusivity for 12 months.
Well, what was the thing in the statistics or something? We might have covered it last week where GTA or something going back on the Game Pass would cost them like 5 million a month or something
5
like
million a
that.
month, yeah, which is
So it was
nuts.
just like this ongoing like payment of such a huge amount. So
Yeah, yeah, and again, we haven't really seen a lot of Capcom games on this kind of service for the most part. At least not like I don't know. We've seen some of the Resident Evils, right? But
Monster Hunter's a big one. We're
yeah,
starting to
Monster
get
Hunter,
more,
yeah,
and then there's that new one that's coming out that's on coming to day one to Game Pass, I believe it is. It's kind of like a Dynasty Warriors looking monster thing.
oh,
I can't
okay,
remember the
yeah,
name of
right,
it.
right.
Yeah. So I think that was coming to Game
Oh, and
Pass
I just realized, of
as
course, they
well.
just put Ace Attorney on Game Pass as well. So like maybe it's more that they just like Phil Spencer is
Mhm.
doing his work in terms of building those
Yep.
relationships up as opposed to anything else.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
we also need to remember that like Capcom is also another Japanese developer and publisher, and
Yeah,
so
yeah,
that yeah.
yeah. These partnerships are so much better than like purchases really. Like
Yeah,
all this talk about buying Sega and Capcom. They get so much more out of a partnership than they would being under the Xbox banner.
yeah, exactly.
So, yeah. Yeah, which I mean like it's taken so long to get the Persona stuff over. So,
And now we're getting all of it. So
and we're getting all of it, and we're getting Yakuza, Day One Game Pass, all that kind of stuff. So there's some really good stuff happening there. So, mm.
all right, let's get into the big story. You want to talk about this one, Kia?
So the Epic Games layoff of more than 900 employees. Sure, let's talk about that.
Fuck
Um,
me. Yeah, so this just got announced today for everyone listening.
yeah, so basically the layoffs have been confirmed. It's like 16% of Epic workforce is being basically shafted, you could say. So they can't build their way out of this one. Um basically it was Jason Schreier from Bloomberg, I believe that they originally had spoken to some familiar people on the matter, and then um, they were basically cutting. Well, I guess. Uh, I mean, what's the best way to say this? So, like, it's what 6 months of severance package?
Yeah, which
Like,
is huge. That's
yeah. Mm. So, and health insurance and all that kind of stuff. So, like, they're doing a little bit to offset this, but that's 900 employees that they basically have to pay for now.
mhm.
Like, what's going to cost them more keeping the employees on or like giving them severance packages and laying them off? And like, that's the Fortnite money. Where's that going? So, mm,
Yeah. Well, I think that from reading the article and kind of getting a feel for what this might be. Again, like you said, they're giving quite a generous severance package and bonuses and other stuff to help people. And they've kind of cited that the like slowing growth of Fortnite is the reason for this.
Yeah.
And so I get the feeling that maybe this isn't like it was. Tim Sweeney basically said that for a while now we've been spending way more money than we earn, which seems ridiculous because what the fuck are they spending the money on?
Have you seen the live concerts that happen in game in Fortnite?
Yeah, true. But it's but like I get the feeling that maybe this is like, it isn't like, we're in the red. It's we're going to be in the red in 6 months if we don't do something about this. So we need to, or we're going to be in the red in 12 months. So we need to cut these people within 6 months.
Yeah. So I haven't really heard of any of actually concerts or anything like that they've been doing, or any announcements that they've been doing with anything for Fortnite at the moment. So I don't know what they've actually been doing in the game, and if they're really not doing anything in that game. So the worst thing, I guess, for a developer, that like for individual people working in a company like this is they're sitting around pressing the same buttons and building the same stuff, and they're not actually doing anything worthwhile with their lives. Yeah, essentially, this could be good for people. Like some people may not actually be happy being in their position. If they get a severance package with health, then I mean, they have to find another job. But like, I mean,
6 months is a lot of runway.
Yeah, so I mean, like, hopefully that 6 months is good enough for them to find new work. But with so many layoffs happening at the moment, I mean, you could, with 900 people, you can build like an insurmountable amount of other. People can go out and build their own.
That's a whole other bunch of developers and publishers that you could build for.
Yeah,
yeah, exactly.
I mean, you could divide that by 10, and that's still, way more than what any one studio would have. You're looking at 5, 10, 15 people sometimes for some of these little games that are turning out really, really good.
Yeah.
I'd like to think that some of these people will pretty much go on and maybe even build some stuff of their own. Maybe we'll start seeing some really unique stuff out of it from the experience that they had developing in Fortnite. But it really depends what were these people doing in their roles.
That's true. And we don't really know kind of where these layoffs are happening, whether it's in the development side, whether it's in admin or marketing or wherever, right? Like I mean, like this, I think this is also just, we've seen this a lot in tech over the last 12. It's been a rough
it's a whole tech
year
thing.
for tech.
Yeah. I mean, what Microsoft was at the end of last year or the start of this year, they laid off some stuff too.
They laid off like 1,000 people earlier this year. EA lost like 800 people as well.
Last week we talked about Crystal Dynamics and marketing and IT.
I mean, obviously, Embracer is divesting a bunch of shit. Like CD Projekt Red, even were laying people off. And part of it is that there is a kind of thing in game development where it's like, well, once a project's done, they don't really need the people, and either they make them redundant and lay them off, or they basically have fixed term contracts that end and they don't renew them unless they have another project to move them onto. So it's not it's not always all like super doom and gloom. It's just kind of part of the industry.
If everyone's contract ends at the same time, that's what happens.
And it's like game development is, it happens in stages, so it's like you don't necessarily need a graphic designer all the way through the game. There's a certain point where it's like, well, my work's done, and it's like, well, then we can't just keep paying you. I mean, some companies do, and so otherwise it's like, well, hey, we've got another project starting up that we want you to move over to. But if you don't, if say you had, Embracer had another project to move a bunch of people over to, or Epic had a bunch of people, had a couple other projects to move people over to, and then suddenly numbers drop, budgets get tighter, and those projects get cancelled, then it's like, well, the project's ended, then what do you do with the people? Like it really sucks.
And it doesn't help that it looks like it was in a staff memo or something they found out about this, some of these.
16% of their workforce, though, is a lot. But also I'm super curious about like how spending more money than they earn. Like, where is that money going? Like, that's what's crazy to me, is that like we've talked, even when we did this, podcast early days, we were talking about how Fortnite was making money hand over fist. Like, it was the company that just could not lose. Like Epic exploded with how popular that game was.
Mm.
I don't know. Obviously, it's going to slow down a little bit, right, as people kind of move on. But it feels, again, we don't get numbers, so it's kind of hard to look at. But they say that slowing Fortnite growth is kind of the reason. But they still like it's that capitalist thing, right? Where it's like, well, it's not like, oh, Fortnite's shrinking. It's like, no, it's just not growing as fast as we want it to.
Yeah, well, I mean, you hit a point where you get X amount. So you get a new generation of gamers and you get them gravitating towards Fortnite because their Xbox console comes with Fortnite skins and, and they like for what the last 2 years, I don't really know if they've done it this year. They were doing retail discs that just had codes in them, and it was like the starter pack just to download the game, and then like various content like anime and all that kind of stuff, just tile sets of different characters, which they did with Apex Legends. EA did that with Apex Legends as well. And that was really good for growth. But if that's the thing that was growing the game, then I mean, they're not talking about it anymore. What are they doing? What are they doing with Fortnite then?
Yeah,
So,
it's a good question, and I think like they also mentioned that they're also divesting from two of their previous acquisitions, Bandcamp and Super Awesome. Like, and I think Mediatonic also the Fall Guys, I got hit pretty hard with this as well. We've seen a lot of this tech stuff being like, well, yeah, like over the pandemic when gaming exploded and people were spending a lot more money on games, a lot of these companies like scaled up to basically cover that need. But now that as gaming has slowed back down to regular levels, they have too many staff.
Yeah.
And so I think like we're getting back to those regular levels of the pre-pandemic. And this is unfortunately the fallout for that is that like, hey, the good times are kind of over. It's kind of back to business as usual.
Yeah, yeah. And like as I was saying before, we're getting into the period, like 2, 3 years into a console is like the golden age for that console where you find that developers have settled into the tech, they know how to use it, they know how to push it, and you start getting really good games over a 2 or 3 year period. And this is where we start seeing some of the best games. And like this year has probably been one of the best, and last year was good as well. We were getting stuff like Elden Ring, which wasn't really pushing the tech, but the games were really good. And Sony had, two of their biggest ones like Horizon and God of War, which were amazing. So which I have not played yet, but I can't
Yeah,
speak to that.
but
But
you're
people are
right. Like the
talking about it.
last year and this year
Mm,
especially has been very,
mm,
very good for video games.
mm, mm.
Um, maybe yeah, like maybe the interest is draining a little bit from Fortnite,
Mm.
and the people who are sticking around aren't the big spenders that they used to be.
So the stuff with Fortnite, where they were doing stuff with Unreal Engine 5, they were starting to push into being able to create pretty much anything you want.
Yeah.
And I don't know, was that translating into like people who play the game can create stuff as well?
Yeah, I think they were the idea was that they were trying to make Fortnite a like engine within an
Mm,
engine to kind of have
yeah.
some like sort of RPG maker
Yeah.
style, like build your own kind
So
of stuff.
a lot of the stuff is going out of the hands of the developers, and basically you just need people to build assets that can be used as tools to put into the game. Like that's Fall Guys did that recently as well, where the whole the last set of not last set of updates, but the they basically I don't know. I think they had about a year where they weren't really talking. They were cutting things from the game and weren't really talking about stuff. And they kind of brought it up where they made user created levels. And
Right.
now you can make your own stuff, and then some of those can get put into the main game, and people can play them,
Hmm.
and they get vetted and all that kind of stuff. And now they're unvaulting more stuff, and now that's kind of coming up again. So in that, I think brought a lot of people back into Fall Guys as well. So
Yeah, but maybe they're just not spending, I guess, is
yeah.
the
And if
uh,
you so yeah, you take it out of the hands of the developers, then
it just feels like they've scaled up too much with too many people and
mm,
too many acquisitions. Like they were on top of the world, and then they
mm.
were like, yeah, we're going to open up a game store and make a bunch of money. Like, let me put it this way: when was the last time you heard about a game going Epic exclusive when it was launching?
Um yeah, like I don't know. I'm pretty sure there's one or two in there at the moment that,
Sure, but it's like
and
that
all you
that was the
hear is a
whole.
groan. All you hear is a groan. So you don't hear anything else from it.
Yeah.
So, but Epic are paying loads of money to get your game on their store first still.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
So,
But it's like it's not getting the press it used to. It got a lot of negative sentiment from people who wanted to play things on Steam or have the ability
mhm.
to,
Yeah, and people only make Epic accounts to get the free games that they give out.
which they're still paying for every month, right? And it's like, can you imagine that?
Mm,
Like, I have an Epic Store account. I've literally only used it to redeem free games, if I even remember or care. And I'm
mm,
just costing that business money.
mm.
They're making literally no money on me, unless they're selling my information, which, hey, good luck.
Yeah.
But yeah, just yeah, the information they're selling is that I'm a fucking I'm a cheapskate. Um, yeah, like I feel like Epic is in a kind of a weird spot, but it is very interesting. Like I don't like the fact that they were like the line that really got me was like, oh, we're spending more than we're making.
Mm,
I was like,
mm.
how is that possible? Like that's got to be some ridiculous mismanagement of funds and management. Like
Yeah.
it's either that or they've invested big into a bunch of projects that we don't know about that they've had to cancel or change. I get
Mm.
the feeling that maybe that's more along the lines of what's happened.
And it might not be directly because of Fortnite as well.
No, I
Like,
mean just Fortnite's just their big money maker, right? But to be
yeah,
fair,
yeah.
I'm sure they know that Fortnite's not gonna be around forever, and that they need to have some future planning for what they do next.
Mm,
Maybe Fortnite 2 or whatever the fuck they call it, right? Or
mm.
whatever they hope their next big hit is just suddenly
Mm.
hit a roadblock.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I don't know. Well, I mean, that's talking about games that are being,
Oh yeah,
hitting roadblocks.
fuck.
Um, let's move on from that into the next story. So basically, Sega unexpectedly cancels hero-based multiplayer shooter Hyenas.
Okay, now I take
So,
umbrage with that title. This is the most expected thing I've ever seen. The only unexpected thing is that it got cancelled before it even released. But yeah.
yeah. So the first time I saw this game, the only time I saw this game, I'm just like, I'm not interested.
Yeah, I was like, you guys, yeah, like I think it
Hmm.
was it, I'm trying to remember where it got announced. I think it was 2021, and I think it
Mm,
was it like Summer Games Fest, I think, or something, and it was just kind of
mm.
like a 30-second trailer that they kind of showed off, and it was like, and everyone their kind of pitch was like Borderlands meets Payday.
Yeah, there's a couple of games like that now as well that have
True.
propped up since then. There's a heist one that's exclusive to PlayStation, I think, that's popped up as well. So that has heist in the name. So basically, do you know anything about this game?
I know a little bit about it.
Okay.
Um, mostly because I was looking into it because there was some talk online in some forums around there being like a marketing shift from Sega away from some of the Persona stuff and the
Hmm.
total. Actually, it was money being because again, this is I will just say this was created by Creative Assembly, who
Yep,
do
I
the
was
Total
gonna bring
War
that up.
series.
Yep.
Also did Alien Isolation, and
Yep.
so apparently there was some stuff around the reason why we didn't really hear a lot about um, the Total War stuff, and there was also some controversy lately about Total War DLC, the latest one that had been announced, and Pharaohs they're working with not looking very good.
Hmm.
Was that a bunch of budget had been moved to Hyenas because Hyenas was going to be a games as a service that would generate a lot of revenue for the studio and the publisher.
Hmm. Yep.
Um, yeah.
Yeah. So since 2014, what Creative did Alien Isolation.
Mm-hmm.
They did Total War Attila, Total War Warhammer, Halo Wars 2, Warhammer 2, Throne of Britannia, Total War, Total War, Total War. It's all Total War, and then they're going to Hyenas. So the only game that they've done that's actually been like a shooter action game of any kind of time is Alien Isolation.
Which even then, like even when that came out, was like people were like, the Total War people are making this,
Yeah.
and like to be fair, Alien Isolation is a fantastic
I I
near
love
near
that
10 out
game.
of 10
It's
game.
it's
It's
such a good game. The
yeah.
tech behind it is really good. So like I mean, and that's kind of their wheelhouse. The tech that they put
Mm.
into the games is kind of like a little it's kind of what people go to their games for. I've never played a Total War game, so I couldn't tell you, but it's always, what you're seeing on screen and how they've done that really
I,
lifted the
I
games
I
up.
loved Rome Total War when I was younger. Like
Mm.
it's an incredible game. Yeah.
Yeah. So an Alien Isolation had two sets of AI where you would have the alien would have one set of AI and then it'd have an AI that tricks the alien into like to give false readings basically.
Yeah.
So that the first AI was really smart and knew where you were, but the second AI was tricking the first AI so that it didn't find you all the time.
Yeah.
And that's amazing.
Yeah. It's genius.
So, yeah. So, like, you imagine if they went and patented something like that, and nobody else could use that technologies like, Shadow of Mordor has,
With the
patented
Nemesis system.
technology
Yeah.
in it that will never be used because they basically shelved all of that stuff,
Yeah.
So the ideas like that don't come along very often. And we know that they can do first person games like Alien Isolation because they've done a really, really amazing job with that. But what was Hyenas bringing to the table?
Like Hyenas, in my mind, and again, I didn't play it, but I heard that people thought it was okay. Like
Yeah,
from there
okay.
was a closed beta that was happening, and people had talked
Mm,
a bit about it, and people are surprised that it got cancelled so quickly before it even came out.
mm,
But obviously, the whatever the response they got from the beta was not good, like so not good that they just shut it down. Um, but I think that it's trend chasing. Like I think when I first saw this trailer, I was like,
uh-huh.
you guys are 5 years too late. You're trend chasing for a game. Like the art
Mm,
style and the humor was this kind of like Borderlands kind of quippy thing, which kind of Borderlands 3 didn't do super amazing, and people were kind of like,
yeah.
like we're kind of done. But like that's very much a last like 2 generations ago kind of thing.
Mm,
Um, they were kind of like, oh, we're gonna do like a payday heist thing with like you can like the things you're stealing are gonna be like Sega objects. You're gonna steal like Sonic plushies and Dreamcasts and things like that, which is kind of funny, but
mm,
it was very like on the nose, like, oh, this is gonna be a game as a service thing that people that everyone we're gonna be supporting for years and we're gonna just milk every dollar out of you. And people are
mm.
kind of turning away from that now. We've had the classic talk where it's like the problem with games as a service is that it's not enough for them to be a game that you play a lot of the time. It has to be the only game that you play and put money into. And there are only so many of those people can support.
Yeah.
And so, like, that's why we've seen so many of these games. Like, we've seen so many live games get canceled this year alone.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, we have what's that new Ubisoft one? I'm blanking on the title, the one that's coming out.
Extra fine?
X-Defiant.
Yeah.
X-Defiant is following this same kind of
Yeah.
game trend. Basically, they're making a meta out of their content,
Yeah.
and then they're trying to draw people into something that is attracting them to their content. So where X-Defiant has all of the Tom Clancy stuff in it, even like, I think have they dropped the Tom Clancy name on that?
Yeah. I think they're just going to call it Extra fine. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So people know what it is, and they know the games that are related. That it's not Tom Clancy, you know, in it's Tom Clancy in essence from the game perspective, but the wider world of the range of the Tom Clancy stuff, you wouldn't see any of that content come into the game.
Sure.
So it's like, why have it? So, but these game companies that have so much content where they can bring people in, like, I mean, the most that we've seen them bring in, they basically do compilations of all of their games and then add art books and covers and all that kind of stuff as bonus content, right? So it's kind of early days in terms of them incorporating all of their media into a game. So I mean, they're not the only company trying to do this at the moment. And the
Yeah.
last good one I saw was PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale on the PlayStation.
Jesus. Yeah. Yeah. I'm just like thinking back on like everything that has kind of followed this sort of pseudo formula of having like
Yeah.
a free to play or like,
Mm.
low barrier to entry.
Yeah.
And like if this game had come out, it would be dead in 6 months.
Mm.
Like it would be done. They would have shut it down in 6 months. It would have been
Yeah.
another Rumbleverse. It would have been another Lawbreakers. Would have been another
Hmm.
what was that one? Battleborn, like Hyperscape. Like there's so many of them being like yeah, we're going to use our IP
Mm.
and try and make something out of it. And I think you're right. Like X Defiant kind of is I think going to be in a good spot for this.
Mm-hmm.
But I think like underlying, because they are leaning on, because I guess the IP is not the important part in that, right? The gameplay is the important part. Like the game
Yep.
is fun to play. It's quite competitive. I mean, we had the same conversation when we were looking at Exoprimal, right? And we were like, this game, like, is this going to last 6 months? Is people still going to be playing this? Because clearly that's in that same kind of mold where they're like, well, this is a games as a service PvE thing that everyone's going to be playing for ages and teaming up with their friends. And they were like, well, yeah, good, you put it on Game Pass so people can play it because no one would have bought it.
Yeah, and I think the talk has kind of died down a little bit on Exoprimal. I
Yeah.
know I haven't gone back to it, but I mean, I want to. But I mean, like, if this is the kind of game that they're building, then why, if they're trying to make a meta out of their games, then why didn't they make a Total War Sega?
Yeah, I don't.
It's not obviously not going to work
Yeah,
because
no,
there's
no
so many
way.
different styles. But Persona's got a tactics game coming out. You look at Persona as a good example, like their games are a set style, but they do all of these offset games that are completely wildly different than what that game actually is.
And I think that they've been there's been a lot of talk about the latest Warhammer, the Total War DLC that they just did being
Mm.
like overpriced for what they're delivering on it. And I
Mhm.
think they're starting to feel the squeeze of like, hey, this game company is not making enough money, and so we need to pivot.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think, I mean, Cameron was saying exactly the same thing about the Age of Empires 2 DLC that just
Yes.
came out. And it's suffering exactly the same problem.
This is also reminding me of. Also, I just looked up Exoprimal.
Uh,
Their 24-hour peak of current players on Steam have been 141.
okay, that's pretty damn low.
That's pretty low, right? From yeah.
Mm. Not the
No,
worst.
not I mean not the worst, but yeah, for an online game, good luck. This also reminds me of again another like live service game that got shut down, Anthem, where you took developers from BioWare who were most used to making things like Mass Effect and Dragon Age and like big Western
Mhm.
RPGs, Western action RPGs, to make a live service third-person shooter, like a game. And again, they decided they wanted to make that, and that was kind of going
Yeah.
to be their thing. But it was like they had no experience making it, and they fucked it. And I get the
Mhm.
feeling like this is on a similar thing, where it's like Creative
Yeah.
Assembly are the wrong studio to be making this. Um,
Mm.
they've
Yeah.
also announced, yeah,
Anthem's still going in terms of like it's a lifeline, but they're not doing anything and they didn't release their update for it.
no, yeah, their roadmap got
So,
scrapped. They were
mm,
gonna they were talking about redoing it. They just cut their losses and left it.
hmm
Um, and that'll get shut down, I'm sure, at some stage as well.
yeah, yeah.
Um, it, yeah, I don't know. I feel like the writing was on the wall immediately, and I'm wondering if this is like, hey, we just need a tax write-off at this stage. We'll just take the loss on this, and just like the fact that they're not releasing it to make any money on the game is kind of nuts. Like that must be real. There must be some
Yep.
real problems.
And that plays back into the conversation of this gets scrapped. The people that have been spending months or years working on this content have essentially done nothing, and they can't take any of this because it's unreleased, can't be added to their portfolio
Yeah.
because it's, confidential
Well,
information.
and they're also
So,
apparently like with this cancellation, they're canceling a bunch of unannounced projects as well. And they've already talked about doing potentially again, it's almost certainly going to be layoffs at Creative Assemblies because of this.
yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, like in terms of staff, the best thing that they could have done was given the staff a benefit of the doubt, released the game, take the loss, got money of it, what they can from it in whatever format it was, so that people can use that and take that. And you don't may not want something like this on your portfolio, but I mean, it could have done well.
Mm. But I
And
think
if it
that
did,
yeah, yeah. I mean,
yep,
evidently, like the beta must have been an absolute
yeah,
nightmare for them to basically like to be fair, even the number of people signing up for the beta, I imagine, is probably an indication of who's even going to play it versus server costs versus
yeah.
the hit to Sega's reputation by putting out this game.
What is the Sony one that
Uh,
got announced?
Zach,
Game.
Zach also points out at least it's not Babylon's Fall. Again, another example of a
Yep.
live service game
Okay.
that barely survived a year.
All right. There we go. Announced recently, I think, at a PlayStation, one of their events. It's called Fair Game
Mm.
or Fair Games. You don't know because the S at the end is a dollar sign.
Oh, right. Okay. Yep. Right.
So a competitive heist experience coming to PS5 and PC.
Huh.
So exactly the same thing, but it's basically well, I don't think we know a whole lot about it, but separate online teams going in and competing over a heist.
Yeah. Okay. That's again, like it's
So,
like you said, they're this isn't a new concept.
hmm. And this looks like it's going to be its own thing set up, and it's not trying to create a meta out of the PlayStation content or
Mm.
anything like that. It's set up to do a whole new yeah, I think Haven Studios, who does that, they might actually be part of Sony now too. Like
Haven,
it's
yeah, I
a
think they got
first party.
acquired. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's the first thing that they might have
Yep. It's their
released.
first game.
Yeah. So, I mean, maybe they just looked at Fair Games and went, well, Sony's going to do it. Like,
I would love to hear this. Like, I'm also like super curious about like the other
mm,
stuff that Creative Assembly was like the unannounced project because they opened a third studio. Like they were
mm,
doing something, probably something quite big.
yeah, yeah.
Mm.
And it's not the first time we've seen, there's like a zeitgeist where concepts kind of come up and then several games that are exactly the same get released at the same time.
Yeah.
The great example was Infamous on PlayStation and
Prototype.
Prototype.
Yeah.
And that's the big one that you can kind of go back to, and they're exactly the same. You had like a good and bad playthrough basically, and depending on how you played, you got a different
Yeah,
ending
well,
or whatever.
again, and
So
they were actually quite different games when you played them, but
yeah,
they kind of
mm,
marketed them, or they kind of were dueling
yeah,
games. This happens in movies sometimes as well, where it
yeah,
was like
yeah,
Armageddon versus Deep Impact when that happened. Both movies
yes,
about asteroids.
yes, yeah,
Um, and it's just like sometimes it's just weird coincidences because obviously these games are quite secretive in terms of who's making them and what's happening with them, and they just get announced, and you're like, oh, wait a minute. Um, I'm also remembering Overwatch versus Battleborn, like Battleborn I mentioned earlier, about like
yeah,
another live
exactly.
service game that just got cancelled, where it was like, oh yeah, hero shooter. It's like, well, yeah, different kind of game, but
Yeah, they're still trying for hero shooters, and like this far down the line, I mean, yeah, I mean, I don't like. I mean, hero shooters, right? So if you have a look at Battleborn as a perfect example, and it's got what, 20, 30 characters, I don't know, like 20
mhm.
characters, 22, something like that. Every single one of those characters were quite good.
Mm.
And those characters are basically been relegated to like the scrap heap. And they could have taken any one of those characters and made something really good out of it.
Yeah, again, a lot of them felt like um, Borderlands rejects. To be honest, that was kind of the
Mm,
like
mm, mm.
Borderlands first draft characters. Um,
Yeah.
well, it's actually because I know that the head writer on both games, was kind
Mm.
of like Anthony
Yeah.
Burch, I think it was.
Yeah,
But it's
because
like,
people want to know with Overwatch more about the characters and stuff like
yeah,
that. They wanted
that's their
this,
big thing.
people wanted the story, the single player story for that, so they can get the nitty-gritty behind the characters and the
I
backgrounds
mean,
and
I
stuff.
mean, having said
So,
that, like Overwatch 2, they fucked it. And that is
mm,
the template for hero shooters at this point, right? It's the poster child, and even they fucked it up.
yeah.
So I'm just like, what? It was like, it was. It's that thing where you have companies chasing trends, and it was like MOBAs back when Dota 2, and League of Legends were
Hmm.
big, and you had like Heroes of New Earth. You had Dawn Guard, I think it was called, or Dawn
Mm,
Break or something. And then it was fucking Pokemon Unite. Like it's like this, and there was so many of those MOBAs. I mean, fucking even they had like a Dead Island MOBA thing or whatever, and they just like there was so many of them, and
mm.
all of them died because they were like people only want to play League of Legends or Dota 2. And then
Yeah.
it was like,
Yeah.
okay, well, let's do the same thing with these like team fight auto battler games, and let's do the same thing with games like Hearthstone, and then let's do the same thing with like, and before that
Mm.
was like MMOs. Everyone was trying to find the WoW killer, and then everyone was looking for the Halo killer before that.
Yeah, like
And,
Gwent and Marvel Snap and
and fucking was it
mm,
Artifact, and there was
mm,
so many. And then it was battle royales. It was, oh hey, we've got PUBG and we've got Fortnite.
yeah,
And then it was like, oh, hey, everyone's doing a battle royale or has a battle royale mode. Fucking the Eliminator, is from someone being like, yeah, let's put a battle royale mode in our game. Let's
Yeah.
do Blackout. Let's do what was that BMX one that Cliffy B was working on that was that
What?
got cancelled.
Ah, I don't even
I don't even remember,
know.
right? But it was like, and so then it was like, okay, well, let's do a hero shooter. Let's
Yeah.
do like
Yeah.
hero shooters. Let's and so it was like Lawbreakers. Um, God, there was a couple other ones that I'm like also got cancelled. I can't even remember the
Mm.
names of. Like this is just another one of those like the next step of games as a service trend. People trying to find the gold at the end of the rainbow
Hmm.
by just taking a shortcut and not doing enough hard work and trying to find an
Okay.
idea that really really works.
And so that's what the AAA studios are doing.
Mm.
Indie studios are going and making replicas of Pokemon. You've got
Yeah.
Temtem,
Yep.
Monster Sanctuary,
Nexamon. Yep.
Nexamon. You've got Power World, Pokemon with guns, like 100% a ripoff
Cassette
of,
beasts. Yeah.
yep, exactly the same Pokemon styles with guns, So, um, like how many AAA studios have made Souls-like games?
I mean, yeah, again, we got a lot of those too. Again, like chasing trends is not a new thing for any part of the business, right? Like
Mm.
that's not what's surprising about this. But the problem is that games as a service, like I will play 10 different Soulsborne games because I like the genre and I like the ideas. Like I love Dark Souls, but I also
Yep.
really enjoyed playing through the Surge. And I'm looking forward to like Lords of the Fallen.
Mhm.
And I really enjoyed Wo Long. But I played those games and then I'm done with them. The problem with games as services is that if you have competing games as service, those things have to live forever. So
Yes.
you play one of them, and it's like, well, this is the one that I play for the next 10 years because that's it. It's like, well, I picked Destiny 2 as my games as a service game. Sorry, literally every other games as a service game. I don't have time for anything else.
Yeah, and even if they start small, if they ramp up and build a player base, then like you look at, I guess, kind of what happened to the Division.
Yeah, Division's a great another like games as a service game for
Yeah,
sure.
so one of the best games and my favorite like of that generation of games, like and it was what a 2013 game or something like that. And I still think of that generation, it is peak
Yeah, it's a
like
great game.
gameplay.
I don't. That's not really my kind of game normally. I had a fantastic time playing through the original Division.
Hmm, hmm. Yeah, that basically built up a player base that became stagnant because they stopped releasing content for it.
Yeah.
And then Division 2, everyone came back for it because they had the 1.8 update and you still had people playing all the time. I still see people playing the Division 2 that were playing it when the game came out. So you will still have those people that kind of go to it, but then you have a gap where you move everybody after the third or fourth year from that studio because it has so much creative talent in it to make a Star Wars game and an
Hmm.
Avatar game, and then it has a year and a half, 2 years with nothing. They create a new studio because they realize people are still interested in it or they want to ramp it back up again, and then they break the game and start releasing new seasons and stuff like that. And like it's bringing people back, but only because that player base is there and is so dedicated
Mm.
to that particular game and love exactly what that is. When the Division 1 came out, what did you see? What was anything in particular that drew you to it at all?
I mean, like I enjoy the Tom Clancy series. Like I
Hmm.
played Ghost Recon. I played
Hmm.
the Rainbow Six series with
Yep.
Vegas was the most recent one
Yep.
before that. And like I love Splinter Cell, and I was like, oh, cool, like more of that kind of like third person combat over the shoulder, but with like my buddies. And I was like, okay, cool. I was like, it didn't grab me immediately, but I like the
Yep.
tech looked interesting. The setting was cool. I was interested in
Mhm.
the story, which kind of ended up not being much of a thing, but like it looked like it had room to be like an online experience with like the dark zone and all that kind of stuff, but it also was like self-contained and not over the top.
Yeah. Yeah. So, the first thing you mentioned was Tom Clancy.
Yeah,
Did not exist in video games in the zeitgeist, basically, again, before Ubisoft really built it up.
for sure. Yeah.
So, it's movies. People know them from movies and know them from the books.
Yeah.
And you were either introduced to one or the other when you got into it, and like that's what was bringing people in, and then you'd see the competitive dark zone area in the game, which
Mhm.
is one specific zone. I believe that changed a little bit after it kind of came out. So you've got a PvE game with a PvP element and then multiplayer, and nobody plays the multiplayer anymore. But that dark zone was always there, and you basically can chase the hard zone.
Mm.
So that's where you can kind of go in and compete against everyone. I go into Division 2 every now and then, and I see nobody in the dark zone.
Yeah, like it doesn't surprise me because I think that the only way to keep people is to
Mhm.
have a huge development
Yep.
team constantly putting out
Mhm.
content for it, and they
Yep.
decided that they didn't want to do that, which
Yeah,
is
but
fine. Like, yeah,
you can go in there and do stuff by yourself without anyone else because
yeah.
there are things to do in that game that's basically primarily solo, and then you're giving people something to do outside of pure multiplayer.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, it's a game.
Yeah,
There is
yeah,
a game there that to be
yeah.
experienced, and that like
Mm,
the games of service stuff is something that benefits the game for the most part on top of it.
mm,
Whereas a lot of these games, with the competitive nature of them, is that they will only exist as long as games as service is a thing.
yeah.
And I think that building a game like that in today's day environment,
Mhm.
like it, it's the wrong move. They're too late. You get the moats are out, the walls are up, trying to get people over from the kinds of people who will play games as a service and
Mhm.
pay for microtransactions for a free to play game are already putting their money into other games, one or two other games.
Yeah.
And you are going to have a hell of a time scaling those walls and trying to get people pull people over
Mhm.
from Fortnite, from Apex Legends, from Destiny. Like, good fucking luck. And if you're not and you're getting creative assembly to build build a game in this, that's not an RTS, like, it was doomed from the start.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
All right.
All right.
I'm just going to quickly go through the Game Pass stuff. There isn't a huge amount there. We've got Cocoon that's launching today on the 29th, which I'm very
Oh,
excited for.
nice. Yeah.
Looks really, really good. Got some good reviews so far. Like, I can get like nines across the board for the most part. So
Mhm.
I'm very keen on that. We've also on October 3rd got Gotham Knights and Lamplighters League coming out as well. Gotham Knights, which, yeah, I think probably pretty good Game Pass kind of game.
Um,
Apparently,
ha has title updates that you don't have to pay for, basically. I don't know if they're adding any content to that, but
yeah,
but yeah, Lamplight League.
yeah, Lamplighters League apparently sort of like an XCOM-y style tactics game with kind of a like 19 like turn of the century kind of humorous kind of, I don't know, it like I think it's like 1930s, I think it's set in. um Looks actually quite good. Apparently it's got some pretty good reviews. I'm probably going to check it out, assuming the achievement list isn't too ridiculous.
Mm.
But yeah, looks good. And then we'll have some more stuff coming from October, I'm sure, being announced in the next week or so. And then the
Yes.
stuff leaving, which, if you're hearing this, good luck getting any of this stuff done. But Beacon Pines, Despot's game, Moonscars, Outriders, Parodius, Weird West, Shins&IO on Windows, and Last Call BBS on Windows as well, are
Yeah.
all
To
leaving on the
to
30th.
say with that as well, not on discount or on discount, you still get the discount for the Game Pass 10-20% off whatever they give
20%
you
off, yeah.
before it leaves as well. So it's
Yeah.
something to think about if you want to pick up at least the DLC for some of these, if there is DLC, because that's kind of discounted to a little bit, but
Yeah, worth
whatever with
some
those.
stuff worth checking out there. Unfortunately, I didn't get Outriders was the only one I really didn't get a chance to get to, but
I didn't get to that either.
but
Yeah.
it's been on some pretty deep discounts in the past, so I'll probably
Hmm.
just hold off.
Yeah. $1 disc at a store anywhere.
David also points out, yeah, Dark Tide should be coming to Game Pass next week as well. Yep.
Game Pass PC, I believe, for that one.
Yes, Game Pass
And
PC. Yep.
it's probably still broken.
Well, apparently this is supposed to be their fix, but I'll believe it when I see it.
Mm. Mm.
Um, yeah, Glock points out that there's been a lot of issues with companies. Yeah, exactly. Like recently, like games as a service. Also, that people have not been treating us super well. I guess let's get into what we've been playing. I want to hear a bit more about Liza P. I'm assuming you put a bit more time into it.
Yeah, so I think I'm about halfway based on the unlockable areas kind of
Mhm.
thing. And I found that the weapons that I've kind of taken on board. So to say, like, the big thing about this game is basically you can take the hilt of the weapon, and you can take the blade of the weapon separately,
Hmm.
and with no extra cost, just dismantle them and then put any combination back together. And then each different one will have different perks essentially. So the one that I've used, I'm using the blade from the start of the game, the
Hmm.
original one I got from the balanced build, and then the baton from like the hilt from the first boss sub boss that I versed, the where they kind of introduced like what you get with a new weapon and what to do with it
Sure.
basically in terms of yeah. So this particular hilt has like a fast once you guard and you weaken the enemy and stuff. It's going this one has like a fast flow to it.
Mm.
So if you want to do like a counter attack, it's a lot faster. I've tried using some of the heavier weapons just to kind of test them out, and I really just don't like the heavy. I like the snappy fast weapons. But so far in terms of I've gotten stuck on maybe one or two bosses. And they mostly play exactly the same, but they change it up with the combinations of like, you're not versing one or you're versing two or four or there's a like a couple of bosses where you're not only versing one
Right.
thing. Yeah, or I've only seen like one multiple phase one so far.
Oh,
So,
okay. Right.
which normally like you see like Wolong, every boss has a second
For sure.
phase.
Yeah.
So I think Sekiro as well had that too. So where people are saying this is more like Sekiro in terms of like mechanics. I've not
Mm.
played that one yet. This one definitely has a very refined system in terms of guarding and blocking and attacking. You're definitely waiting a lot to see the you're waiting to see what the enemies are doing. I'm the kind of person that plays these kind of games where I will die three, four, five times against an enemy just to see what kind of moves they do, and then I
Right.
know exactly how to counter them. I don't care like but generally going into the first time that I verse a boss is generally my best, and then it's that thing where you slowly get worse and worse and worse at
Yep.
it,
Classic.
and
Yep.
then you kind of work it out right, and then you're blocking every single time. But yeah, I've gotten close with some of these bosses the first time. Guarding is for at least for me quite easy.
Mm.
It's like the timing, there's normally like a tell, or like when the enemies kind of reach their weapon back to attack you, there's like a tiny flinch where you know that the momentum is coming from going back to forward,
Right.
and then that's kind of the moment when you know to strike. But there have been ones that have done moves consecutively, like huge spins where you're just constantly being attacked, where I've been able to block, 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 and just hit it every single time.
Oh, nice. Nice.
So
It's a good feeling.
it is good. It is good. So yeah, so I really like the bosses in this game. The first major boss that you've got is kind of like a puppet Dr. Robotnik kind of looking thing.
Okay. Yeah.
So so it's kind of like, oh yeah, that's kind of funny, but they've they're delving into some really strange later game it's getting away from puppets a little bit, and I'll be interested to
Mm.
see where it goes from there, and how that kind of ties back to the story. But I think because I kind of went back and started to look at because you've got obviously the Pinocchio that everyone knows from Disney, but then you've got kind of the meanings behind why they originally created Pinocchio, the person that
Right.
made Pinocchio, and stuff like that. And it was kind of like stories to teach children morals.
Mm.
And I'd be interested, and I kind of see that some of the elements of some of the bosses are kind of more tied to something that kind of went wrong with the systems, kind
Oh,
of
okay. Yeah.
like one, not to spoil, it's not spoiling or anything, but it's like one boss was saying, I have all this, all I wanted was gold. Why am I the only person like this? And they're basically this monstrosity thing that isn't a puppet, it's something else.
Mm.
So it's kind of like, so there's a lot of th- it's probably going to wash past a lot of people in terms of like the deep connection that they're trying to pull in terms of morality and all this stuff behind it. And I've not really even had too much of the yeah, tell the truth, tell the lies kind of thing
Right.
come up. And I think I said last week that there was one that I didn't even know if I was saying it right, if I was saying the right thing.
Yeah, right,
So it's
right.
like, okay, so I'm lying to them, but am I lying them to tell the what actually happened, or am I telling them what they want to know? And is that the truth to them, or is that the lie to them? It's like I
Yeah.
don't know. I don't know. So I think I've messed up at least one because you can get like, complete truth or complete lie
Sure.
playthroughs.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm kind of just doing a blind playthrough
Yeah, sure.
myself. But combat mechanics, like I think I was saying this on another Discord, basically that this game, just to describe the game, the concept behind the game. The guys that made this game, they did Blessed Unleashed, I believe,
Yes,
before
originally.
this.
Yeah.
If this is their first like Souls-like game, you imagine a company, well, a dev studio that is able to replicate so perfectly their inspiration. Like this is so closely like the original Dark Souls, Demon Souls games that there's a certain pedigree that takes for them to replicate it so well.
Mm.
And like I would straight up say Xbox, go and buy these guys because if you want to add something to your wheelhouse that you don't definitively have in your wheelhouse, you need to pick these guys up maybe and then start getting them to just make Souls games or something because they're doing such a good job that they it doesn't have to be, it could be, maybe they can make a Grimm's Fairy Tales kind of like game next or
Yeah,
something like
I can
that,
see
something
it. Yeah.
completely different style, like all of these old stories that have morals and stuff to them, make them into Souls games. They could do so much stuff,
I,
and build on it and make better games,
I
even than this one.
I play
So,
Halo Souls. That sounds great.
oh, oh,
Just
Halo's Souls. Oh yeah, you relegate them to the Halo
yeah, you just play as
universe.
the Arbiter. And you just gotta parry motherfuckers.
Yeah.
I mean, like, yeah, this is on my list. This is on my to play list.
Mm.
I just have not had the time, but I am so excited to give this a go because I've been hearing
Yeah.
nothing but good things. I've heard they've also patched it a little bit to make some of the bosses less ridiculous.
Mm.
Which I know some people are complaining about, but yeah, I'm very curious. I definitely want to hear more about it as you kind of like get towards the end of your first playthrough.
Yeah. David's like Snow White and the Seven Souls. Yeah.
Yeah, that's actually, yeah.
Yep.
The Little
Nice.
Mermaid one is going to be real weird. Um, all right. Anything else you want to talk about with Liza P?
Liza P, that's probably about it. I can't sing the game's praises high enough. I'm keen to go back to it basically and finish it off. And I was thinking even streaming now that I've got everything set up properly, maybe the second playthrough, because you want to play these games streaming with a little bit of proficiency, right? So
True. Yeah, we'll see how many get goods you get in the
yeah,
chat.
exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So
Uh,
what about you?
I just want to say one thing I saw about Liza P today was apparently, depending on how much you've lied, people were always like, "Oh, Pinocchio's nose doesn't grow when he lies," but apparently, when you're in what's it called, the Stargazer,
Oh
um,
yeah, okay.
apparently,
Um,
the
mm,
shadow of his how long his nose is will change depending
okay.
on how much you've lied. So you don't actually see it physically, but if you look at the shadow, you'll see how long it is.
Okay, I haven't noticed, and maybe I'm on the track not lying or something like that. I
Yeah,
don't
maybe.
know,
I
but
don't know. Yeah.
yeah, I didn't even know that actually, even having a look at the game. So, um, yeah, yeah, that's interesting. So it does this weird thing where it says that your gears are shifting,
Right.
and that's telling you when there's a morality change. So, but once it happened, when I didn't even know why.
Mm.
So, yeah, so.
Yeah, I'm
It's like
definitely
my
gonna give
bones
this a
are
go.
getting old, and you start feeling the creaks and stuff physically, and that's, yeah. Hmm.
And then it becomes like Deus Ex. They just swap you out with robot parts.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So okay, I'll talk about what I've been playing, which is not a lot. So I've been playing some more Starfield. So
Mhm.
I finally got to the end of the campaign. I got to see the big ending. Um, yeah, that main campaign. It starts off slow. It has some quite interesting points in the middle, but there's a
Mhm.
lot of filler. I found out that I was complaining the other week about how it felt like a lot of the missions were just like randomly generated. Go and collect this artifact from this area. They are literally randomly generated. The artifact, like half of the artifacts are tied behind actual story missions. The other half are they just randomly generate them on a planet and you have to go and get them. And so it's like, bro, that's half, you missed half the campaign. So yeah, not super impressed by that, unfortunately. There was a lot of good moments in there, but it just kind of felt like with a lot of filler, unfortunately. But I also spent this week doing the faction quests.
Okay.
So there are 4 main factions that you can join, and they each have a sort of dedicated quest line of about 9 to 10 quests or so, depending on how you split them. So the first one is the United Colonies, which is the first area that you start in. They have a really, really interesting quest around you going to a planet and finding a creature that should not be there, terrorizing the place, and it kind of spirals into an investigation of how the hell it ended up there, and it turns into a big conspiracy around there was a whole division of Xeno weaponry people who were basically trying to weaponize aliens in the war. And you kind of need to try and find all these people like you're a Nazi hunter, just trying to pull them together to be hey, we need you to research this shit to figure out what the fuck happened. Did you let something loose? Did you break something? What's going on? That was really, really cool. There's the other faction, the other warring faction on the other side of the war was the Freestar Collective, which are the cowboy guys, the libertarians. Yeah, their side quest is you play as a ranger, and basically you kind of doing a mystery.
I think that's what I've been working on. I haven't gone back to it this week, but yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with that.
It starts off being hey, someone's being harassed on a farm, and these mercenaries are trying to get them to give up their farmland, and so you go and that kind of spirals off into okay, well, why and who? And it turns out there's a division of the war that basically when the ceasefire was given, they basically said fuck you and we're all court-martialed or whatever. And yeah, so it's okay, that storyline was okay. It wasn't. I was kind of okay, it's kind of a bit throwaway, not a lot of interesting characters. And then the third storyline was basically all corporate espionage, which I actually quite enjoyed. And it was very much sort of an updated take on the Thieves Guild of Skyrim, where you work for a company called Ryujin, that are a tech company where you basically need to go around and plant evidence or steal files or sabotage things and that kind of stuff, while also trying to it's oh well, we need to do a bit of we have some technology that's gone missing, we need to find out who leaked it and that kind of stuff, while also dealing with corporate politics and board members trying to vie for control of stuff. And that was quite interesting. And they're very, very sneak heavy. The whole idea is that you get less rewards if you kill anyone or get seen. So there's big emphasis on stealth, which was a nice change of pace of just going in there and blowing everything away with a rifle, which was kind of what I've been doing with everything else. And so that was pretty good. It ended kind of lackluster. But there's some you get some cool stuff out of it. And David also mentions, yes, some of the rewards you get for these side quests are pretty cool. The one you get for the Rangers is a spaceship called the Starhawk, I think, which
that's good to know, because that's the first one. If that's the first one I've been doing,
yeah, the FC is a really good one to just get done, because the spaceship that you get is fantastic.
Great.
And then the last one I did was the Crimson Fleet, which is the one that kind of everyone's been talking about, where Cameron was talking about this one as well, where the Star Eagle, thank you, David. You go in and basically hey, this system defense regiment or part of the United Colonies is hey, we're trying to root out piracy. We need you to go undercover and basically go undercover with these pirates and try and learn everything about them, gather evidence, and kind of fuck them over a little bit, slowly but surely, lead them into traps to get them captured and stuff, while also trying to maintain your cover. And that's kind of that's definitely one of the more interesting quest lines, because it's you kind of get to make the choice of hey, how fucked up am I going to be? Am I going to truly be undercover, or am I actually going to side with the pirates on stuff? And so there's some heist stuff. There's some oh hey, looking for treasure, trying to find lost ships and all that kind of stuff. And I really enjoyed that quest line. The only problem with it is that I was the pirates kind of sucked, and I was like, I didn't really feel like I had a lot of good reason to side with them because they're all just
Okay.
assholes. But maybe that's just because I'm a nice moral person to begin with and have trouble empathizing with, murderous psychopaths.
So I'd say, what would you say then? Factions or beeline the main story?
I would say do the main story first.
Mm-hmm.
Or actually, I would say I would say do the main story first. Because the rewards you get and the things you unlock are quite helpful for the other stuff.
Okay. So you wouldn't say like do one or two factions in particular and then the story, or
I say like if you did the FC is probably maybe the first one you should do. Like you get introduced to the FC faction during the main quest anyway. There's a bank heist that happens that you have to like talk someone down from.
Yep,
And
I
like
saw that now.
as soon as you do that, like it opens up that, and I was like, okay, I might as well just do it. And like
Yep.
the ship that you get is good for basically most of the game. And then I would go and mainline the story. I did the Crimson Fleet last, and I think that's probably the right one because it has the most combat and probably some of the harder stuff in the game. So I think like the order I did it was pretty good. And I think like it's given me time to kind of understand the systems, level up a bit. I'm like in level like 45 or so. So I've done a lot of the game. I've seen a lot. There's still a lot of there's heaps of side quests out there, but I kind of felt like I've got a good grip of the game now that I've done like all the main faction side quests and the main quest, and kind of, in the same way that like once you kind of do that in Skyrim, you kind of feel like you've been to most of the places and seen most of what you need to see.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. So do you find that it's the factions are kind of spread out in typical Bethesda style? Like you said that there's the Crimsons, like this one, or the Thieves.
Yeah, I think it's more Skyrim than it was like Fallout. I mean, obviously the
Okay.
game pulls a lot of inspiration from Fallout in terms of like combat, from it's like using guns.
Yeah.
But I think that in terms of like the faction side quest things and also the leveling abilities by using them kind of thing is very much more of a Skyrim Oblivion kind of thing, where it's like you have a dedicated faction with a dedicated quest line that doesn't really interact with the other ones.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, which I kind of prefer because I was like, I didn't really like the problem I had with like New Vegas, for example, is that like doing quest lines for certain factions would fuck you out of other ones.
Okay.
Yeah, and so I was like, okay, like it's not like I understand from like a thematic point of view why it's like, oh, these two factions that don't get along, like it doesn't really make a huge amount of sense that you could work for one side of the war and then the other side of the war. But
yeah.
they're just like, well, we don't want to lock off content for people. We want people to experience everything.
Yeah, well, hopefully they, as extra content, just add extra factions, right?
That was good. Yeah, that was going to be my next point. Is I feel like this game is very open ended in that they could add factions quite easily. They have a lot of space to do it. Where in a game like Fallout or Skyrim, it doesn't really make as much sense, or it would be a bit more awkward. I mean, they did do it with Skyrim with like Dawn Guard and that kind of stuff, but I feel like Starfield is uniquely positioned to be able to like, we'll put another thing on another planet. Like it's not that difficult to do. There are enough there. There's thousands of planets out there. You got to literally visit 100 of them for an achievement and visit every galaxy for another achievement. But yeah, I do like this game quite a bit. Let me put it this way: when I was doing the Crimson Fleet, I was up till 4 a.m. finishing the quest line because I was like, I need to get this done. Like I was really invested. But having played that much of the game, you definitely see the flaws coming through. And I think the stuff I talked about last week is unfortunately only got like the good stuff has gotten better in terms of like characters and quest lines, but the flaws have gotten more apparent as you play through more of the content and see more of the same stuff. A lot of the sort of copy paste things, a lot of planets being barren and not interesting. It would have been a lot better if they had literally just done, hey, there are 10 planets. They're a lot more fully fleshed out, and you just kind of go between them in the same way that kind of what was it? Outer Worlds did.
Right. Yeah.
Where it
I
was
guess
like it was more condensed kind of experience.
It could take a lot. Yeah, I can see where the inspiration had kind of come from that one way or the other, really.
Yeah, because like it kind of feels like, I think there was a story where they were talking about like the environmental effects that they kind of toned them down because the original idea was you would have different like space suits for different environments that you would go into that would have different resistances.
Yeah.
But like I built an outpost for like the XP grinding stuff, and the outpost system is really kind of boring and uninteresting, and there's just like so much dead space out there. There's nothing there. Like it's like there isn't really a lot of reason. Like there aren't enough like random events or randomly generated quests or interesting stuff that really would incentivize you to go out to the other parts of the galaxy and see things, because there's fuck all there. There's very little curated content. Like, you know, because again, the star map goes from like left to right, and like the left side of the star map is the lower level stuff. The higher level stuff is on the right. There's nothing to the
Right.
right. It's all
Okay.
just higher level enemies and areas that you
Mm.
don't really need to go to for any reason.
Yeah,
And
okay.
I'm hoping that they add more to it. But yeah, David points out like there's a whole temple system that you can go to is not a great system either. I just, yeah, like I like this is like an 8.5 for me. You know, like I'm enjoying it, but there are some serious problems that I hope they iron out. There's a lot of quality of life stuff that I talked about last week that they just, you know, gets worse and worse as the more you play it, unfortunately. I really feel like they kind of tried to do a bit of a No Man's Sky thing and then kind of realized it wasn't done and kind of pulled a lot of it out. I'm sure they'll add like a survival mode and other bits and pieces to make it kind of more in line with that in the future. But I'm just unfortunately not. I enjoy it, but I'm not like blown away like I was
Game
hoping
of
I
the
was
Year
going to be.
contender?
If it is, it's going to be like if I'm doing
Mm.
like a top 10, this is going to be sitting around like the eights and nines. I think.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
I don't think it's going to make top five, but we'll see.
Okay.
I do still have a lot of grinding to do to get to level 100. So, but that's going to be again.
Mm.
I've done the game. Now I do the work.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. That's the achievement hunting side coming out.
Yeah,
The
unfortunately,
work.
it's like it
So
is a bit of an issue where it's like you can get through all the content at like level 50 and then have
yeah.
50 levels of fuck all to do.
Yeah. I guess I ideally you'd end up with new content that would take you to level 100 eventually,
Exactly.
but
Yeah.
that's not the way we do things around here.
No, not really. And it's not the way they unfortunately have the game kind of set up. Like I said, there is like those higher
Yeah.
level areas don't really have anything in them yet.
Hmm.
Um,
Cool.
yeah, but that's Starfield. That's probably the last time I'll really talk about it because there isn't. Again, I'm not going to find any new content. I don't think, unless they make some major changes.
It
But
doesn't
that'll
seem
probably be
like
it.
it's going to change a whole lot. If
No,
anything, they'll just add content
yeah,
and fix
exactly.
stuff. So,
Tell me about Proteus, which is one of our games leaving Game Pass.
so you've played Proteus, yeah?
Yes, I did.
Yes. So, I actually really love this style. I love the 3D environments with the 2D pixely
Yep.
weapon, and I'd be so much keener to play like this. This is basically gimme up for bolt gun,
Yeah,
stuff
pretty
like that.
basically,
So,
yeah.
like, if all of these old remakes brought on this style and then just made 2D pixelated guns. So this is a first-person shooter, has very much on the lines of Doom and Quake, the old school. I think it had a whole bunch of backers and may or may not have been like a Kickstarter thing or something at some point. I'm not quite
Maybe. I'm not sure
sure
about that.
because there's a level called Memoriam that's looks like it's basically all of the backers, but it doesn't. It looks like it's
Oh yeah,
tribute
no,
to
yep,
the
yeah, you're right.
people
It
in
it,
the
it was kickstarted. Yeah,
yeah. So there's like there's walls of people's names, and it's done in a level where you basically just fight enemies, and all of the names of people are lined on the walls, and it's like this is for,
that's right. Of
everybody
course.
that
Yes, I forgot
contributed to
about
the
that.
space station, blah blah blah. Everyone's dead, whatever. So, um, I these levels take a long time to play. I think TA or something says it's like 40 hours or something to complete or something. Some people are doing it in like 16 or so, but I mean, it's about a 20 or so hour game because some of the levels can take half an hour to 40 minutes. And then
Yeah,
if
it's a
you
boomer shooter in that way that like some of the levels are just too long.
and if you miss enemies, you play the game again, you're finding the enemies. Like I'm on a level at the moment that I'm trying to play to find an enemy, and it only releases that enemy if you stand on a specific spot or
Yep,
go in a specific area.
I know the exact
So
level you're talking about too because I ran into that
yeah,
same issue.
yeah. And it's just like get on this green spoon looking thing and travel across the thing, and it's
Yep.
yeah. And I'm missing to play through that level twice, and I'm missing 11 enemies both times, and I'm just like, where are they? So. It has quite a lot of levels as well, and I am following the guide and following a guide. It's the one you posted in the Discord.
Mm,
It doesn't take away from playing the game at all. It's kind of nice to play through it that way, just to kind of play through it. But I'm not losing anything by playing with because you find
yeah,
everything, you can see everything clearly. You've got to collect ore and you know where it is. it's just taking away the busy work of like, oh, jump on this platform, jump on this platform
Run
to
up
get
against walls
around
until you
to it.
find the secret
But
thing. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So, it's the levels are laid out really, really well. Um, but there's just a freaking lot of them.
Yeah.
So, and it just takes so long. I'm only about halfway through the levels, and I've got a couple of days before it leaves Game Pass. But overall, yeah, I absolutely love this style, and I wish I played it when it came out to Game Pass.
Mm,
When it came out, we were Cameron, I, and Lee from the Xbox cast, we were all streaming The Ascent. And
that's
then
right. Yep.
the day that that came out, Cameron and I afterwards popped in and did half an hour worth of streaming together afterwards in this game. But it was the same time that I'm pretty sure because Metal Hellsinger left last
Yes, it
week,
was. Yeah.
it was like the same time that that came out. Probably the same time Naraka came out. I think some of the server closures that were going
September
on.
last year. Yeah.
Yeah, so there was some server closures going, this and that was happening, Naraka came out or whatever, and then like there's stuff like that. So or we were doing these other games that were so I never got back to it. So it's kind of nice to go and play it, and I want to see a whole lot more of this kind of stuff. So but yeah, love the old style. I'm actually probably gonna, start loading up some of the old shooters and stuff that I played, but like I think going back to some of the old Doom games and stuff probably pales in comparison to some of these levels because these levels are really good.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, probably more akin to it's like the Doom style, but with the Quake levels.
It definitely has. It's more like a Quake 2 kind of.
So
Yeah.
exactly, yeah, yeah. So, but it's nice, yeah.
Yeah. I really enjoyed. I did it back in February because I was just
Okay,
when I was on my Game Pass kick. And
yeah.
I'm really glad that I did. But yeah, it took me about 20 hours
Mm.
to finish it or so.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, so it shouldn't take me too much longer, and I'm getting through it pretty fast, but yeah, just replaying levels is kind of, kicks you around a little bit, having to spend so much time on some of the levels. So, but yeah, how is Weird West? That's another Game Pass leaving, so
Yeah, Weird West. So I wasn't actually planning on doing this one,
okay.
but I was kind of like, I got through like quests in Starfield, and I was like, I didn't really want to sit there and grind out for like 10 hours the levels, and I was like, I want to play something else. Weird West is sitting there. I've seen some people complete it and say it wasn't too bad, and I found a guide for it, and I was like, fuck it, I'm just going to do it.
Yeah.
It's 15 to 20 hour game. I can do it. So I started it yesterday. For those who don't know, it was made by Wolf Eye, I think is sorry, Wolf something or other is
Yep.
the developer, which is a person previously worked on previously was with Arcane,
Okay.
Dishonored devs,
Yeah. Yeah, nice.
and
That's good.
so it's the game kind of pitches itself as a like twin stick shooter, like sort of similar to the Ascent. Actually, the Ascent is very similar.
Okay.
The Ascent with like a sort of stealth and magic system.
Hmm.
And the idea being that basically you are in this place called the Weird West, which is kind of like the Wild West, but with like werewolves and like and witches and like
Mm.
monsters and that kind of stuff. It's kind of like you're on the big frontier after a huge cataclysmic event has basically forced people to move west, discovering all this strange stuff. There's a lot of world building, a lot of lore, but the main conceit is that you are in some sort of ritual as a body hopper, and you basically hop between into the bodies of 5 different people who live in this world, and you basically take over them for a certain period of time from the beginning of the end of their story, or like a
Right.
chapter of their lives. But these are all real people who exist in this world, so they have a life beforehand, and then after you finish it, assuming they live, they have a life
Yeah.
afterwards, and they have a personality afterwards that is not you, so they don't actually really
Mm.
remember the part where you're controlling them.
Yeah. And
uh,
everyone has a place in this world as well, don't they? It doesn't just everything happen in this world.
yeah, it's a singular world per chapter, and the things that like if you go to a place and kill everyone in it, they will mostly stay dead or change, or
Mm.
like the world is quite dynamic and
Mm.
interesting. And like the story is interesting, like it's got some like interesting hooks. I'm like, oh, okay, I'm kind of
Mm.
curious. Like each individual chapter has kind of its own arc, but they all obviously relate to back to this main meta story that you kind of the reason why you keep jumping into these people's bodies as it kind of gets revealed It's about
Okay.
something about immortality. Maybe there's some kind of ritual, and you're kind of learning more with each person that you complete the story for. And so the five people that you play as. So the first one you play as a bounty hunter, and then you play as a pig man, a person who's been turned into like half man, half pig hybrid.
Right.
Then you play a sort of Native American like style character, who's on a quest to hunt the Wendigo. And then you play the current one I'm playing is a werewolf.
Okay.
And then I think the last one you play is a witch, one of the witches. And so each of them have different abilities, but there are certain things that like when they each have like unique, like 3 or 4 unique abilities, but then you also have like passives and other abilities. And then you have perks, and those kind of carry between the characters. So there are some stuff that's unique to the characters. But the cool thing is that once you finish a character, like you move on to the next one and you're like, oh, well, you lost all your stuff. Like you're playing a new person, but you can go and find that person in the real world and be like, so as soon as I started as the pig guy, I was like, I went back to the bounty hunter and I was like, hey, do you want to like join my posse and hang out with me? And they're like, yeah, absolutely. I want to figure out what the fuck happened.
Sure.
And so, and then when she joined, the bounty hunter joined, she had all the weapons that she had when I played as her. So I just moved them over to my main character, gave her some good stuff.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. So like, it's a really interesting system, but it's like, but if she dies, she's dead. And it's like, that's it. Like, there's no like game over if like the person that you're no longer playing as dies, like that, they're just out of the story. And there's also like quite a bit of flexibility in that you can take a gun to anybody and just kill them.
So does that just end the chapter and you just move on to the next chapter?
No, like you just like the game just keeps going. It's like, well, we'll figure it out. It'll just the game will kind of like,
yeah.
And that kind of, it's an interesting system that kind of brings to the forefront my problem with the game is that it's quite shallow, unfortunately. Like it's a very interesting system, but it's kind of billing itself as like Dishonored is that kind of immersive sim kind of thing where it's like interact with the world in different ways to solve problems differently.
It's the systems, not the
but the thing is the systems aren't that interesting. Like it's kind of like, oh, you can do the classic thing of like selling all your guns to the weapon guy, and then when he goes to sleep you can go and steal them back from him or whatever. But this game basically boils down to you can either stealth your way through areas and murk people, or you can just shoot them, and that's kind of it. The powers aren't that interesting. There isn't really a lot of options of stuff. The combat is very, very samey. Like that was my kind of the biggest problem is playing the game. Unfortunately, like the set dressing is really interesting and the characters are quite cool and the story is kind of intriguing, but the gameplay is like a very standard sort of third-person shooter with twin stick shooter with powers. There is no like conversation tree system, like persuasion system or anything like you'd find like in a New Vegas or a Prey game or anything like that. Or like your abilities don't really impact the game all that much. Like you don't end up with like a nice blink teleport or invisibility. Well, there's a little bit of that, but like very, very little. It's kind of like relatively bog standard in the same way like the Ascent is like, you kind of get a couple of abilities, but most of the game is going from one place to another and shooting things. And like, so I think like the Ascent is probably the closest thing to this game, but with not nearly as much style.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And the loot aspect is also quite pared down. Like there's not really a lot of variety in the things that you pick up. You basically just pick up like either like straight upgrades for different types of weapons. But like if you find like a 3-star shotgun and you find another 3-star shotgun of the same thing, they're gonna have exactly the same stats. So it's there's not really like there's like a very minor loot progression system, but it just kind of feels like quite simple in a way that I was kind of hoping for a little bit more. And so like they kind of put all their eggs in like the story and the world building and kind of this kind of 5 protagonist thing that's happening. But I'm like I'll finish it, but I think it's kind of like it's like a 7 or like maybe like a 6. Like it's like a 3-star. It's like a 3-star game. Like it's not bad. If you want to play it like I think Aftos was talking about, it's on his like 75% off. I'll pick it up kind of discount thing. I think that's probably where it should sit. Like I think it's a relatively good Game Pass get.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like let me put it this way. I'm struggling to stay like invested. And if I wasn't on a deadline, I probably would just kind of like be meandering through it and not really playing it. I would be jumping back and playing other stuff and coming back to it every now and then. I'm kind of forcing myself to finish this.
Well, it's fair. Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll I'll see if it amazingly changes, because I'm kind of halfway through the werewolf at the moment. I've still got that chapter to do, and then one other chapter, which I think the last chapter is quite short. But yeah, we'll see how it goes. I'm about 9 to 10 hours in. I think people are estimating like 15 hours. So a lot of missables too. So if you definitely check out the Steam guide, because obviously it's like, hey, some stuff you can only do with certain characters. If you kill someone or kill the wrong person, or do the wrong quest, you could fuck yourself over quite badly. So yeah, definitely can be a little bit of a funny one for achievements.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's all I've had time to play this week. Starfield has been taking up a lot of my time.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, yeah. I've really only played the 2 games as well. So, I mean, one Game Pass leaving and a new release. So, yeah, be interesting to see where I'm at. I should at least be finished the campaign, hopefully, with Liza P next week, at least the one time to reassess that. But
I'm probably going to jump on Cocoon, I think, maybe next week, and maybe depending on what people say about it, and maybe have some, hopefully something to report next week.
That was one I was looking forward to as well, but I felt it was going to break me. Like I wasn't going to get very far.
Yeah, I think I'm hoping it's one of those games that becomes a little bit easier to understand once you start playing it.
Yeah.
All right. I will just quickly jump through the leaderboard. There isn't a. I think we had. Oh, sorry, I lost it there. The TA has been down for maintenance, so I've been trying to catch up. Okay, so in third place we have Mephisto for the win with 6,030. We have Red 47 with 10,160, and in first place we have Thrash Forever with 18,925, which is another huge week.
Yeah, awesome.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Do you want to read through our completions?
Yep, moving on to the shout outs. So the Moonzom finished Celeste Texas Chainsaw Massacre the stack, so I believe it's quite easy to transfer your progress over to the other version of that to do both if you want. And Toem as well. Just Jake did Moonscars and Proteus. Super Bob did Batman Arkham Asylum 2 times. I think he's working on the Japanese ones of that, or finished that one. Left 4 Dead L4D Pills here. Finished Beacon Pines. Sigma Bless did Liza P. I think that's the first one we've had on the server of that one.
Yep.
K791998 did Crisis Remastered. Is absolutely having trouble with some of that trilogy. The redo trilogy apparently is terrible.
Yeah, the achievement wise is very buggy, which is why I didn't start it.
Yeah, Shadow finished Shenzhen, is it IO?
IO, yeah.
Yeah, okay. And Firehawk finished Space Invaders Infinity Gene, which he's been raging about in the chat a little bit. So
yeah, I might have to go back to that now that he's done that.
Yeah, I need to log in on the 360 and do the music one or whatever.
Oh yes, because it has to be, with the disc.
Yeah, I've downloaded it because I went through my all of my purchase list and just to see what I needed to download, and that was definitely one I got downloaded. So I'll be starting that as well. Probably won't continue with it soon, but yeah, I'll at least get that out of the way. And that's it. That's the completions for the week.
Fantastic. Good job, guys. Let's move on to the word challenge, everyone's favorite competition on our Discord, where basically I come up with a game and you have to guess the name of it in our Discord. We have a channel called the Word Challenge. If you guess it correctly, a gift pops up and you win a prize, usually like $20 or a game code or something along those lines. We'll figure it out when we get there. But each week I give a clue. The clues range from unhelpful to basically giving you the answer. We're getting towards the end, I think, so it'll hopefully be someone guessing it. We had some good guesses so far, but the clues have been relatively unhelpful. But the first clue was that this game has books. And that could be the game has libraries. The game could have like spell books. It could have like books you pick up. Could just have books in the background. But it's a game that has books. The second was that it has RPG mechanics. So like a gear system or leveling or stats or something along those lines, And this last one, this game contains knights. Knights as in, knights of the round table. So probably gives you an idea of like what kind of setting this game might kind of be in. What kind of maybe time frame or genre.
Knights plural or night? Knights, huh? Knights.
Knights. I put knights.
There you
Plural.
go. So it's not one night. It's
It's
not a
well, yeah,
lonely night.
yeah. So yeah, so it at least 2 or more knights in it somewhere. So that might give you a bit of a taste for what to look for. Might help narrow down your list a little bit. The next week's clue is probably going to be a nice one to really help. But I'm really curious to see what kind of guesses we get. It's also not the fucking witness. All right. I'm just gonna do a quick shout out for our Patreons. Patreon.com/HaulerGamers is the place where you can come hang out with us and find out all of our old stuff that we've done in Lights, Camera, and Action, as well as all the pre and post show stuff that we put together for this show. And you can help by donating to the show and helping us pay for things like Zoom and hosting of the podcast and prizes and equipment and all that kind of stuff. So a huge thank you to Lee Howard, Mikhail KV, Natolinator, Mad Lefty, Admiral Awesome, Happy Moogles, Kung Fu Skills, Hack and Pone, Cavalier 07, Old Mate Clown, Mark B, McLovin Legend, Mace J, and Left for Legacy for supporting the show. We could not do this without you. And then, as always, we did the show live on Twitch. You come hang out with Zach and David and someone called Glock Lesnar, which is a great fucking a great username. On Xbox Hall of Gamers on Twitch. Come say hi, hang out with us, shitpost, ask questions, interact with us. We try to make the show as dynamic as possible. And that's pretty much going to bring us into the show. Kia, have you got some shilling to do?
Yeah, so you can just find me retweeting other people's tweets and tweeting on the odd occasion over at Kia Live at Home on Twitter. I'm also I do stream seasonally, so that if that ramps back up, you'll hear if your notifications are on and you're part of Twitch at Holo. Sorry, at Kia Live at Home. That's me, not you guys, not this channel. And you can also find the VODs for streaming and a couple of guides and stuff like that I might be doing over on YouTube at HTFG Play. And that's it.
Amazing. And as always, I'm Neomaster on everything, True Achievements, Xbox, and Discord, if for some reason you need to get a hold of me. Well, thank you all for joining us. Thank you to our audience, live studio ones. Huge thank you to Char for doing our technical work behind the scenes to make the show happen and flipping me off. Yep, thank you. You guys can't see this. This is all back-end stuff, so enjoy that. That's going to be episode 96. We will catch you guys next week. See you later.
All right. Have a good week.